Would, Jim, would you like to lead us in the pledge this morning?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion for these meeting minutes?
So moved.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Mickey? And
Yes, ma'am.
come on up.
Come on down.
Jim?
Come on down.
Come on up.
Move this chair over for the educators here. Make sure they go.
Sure. Yeah, I think if we don't have enough chairs, or Jim, bring a chair.
No, that's fine. They're the ones that are going to talk. So if you have any questions for me,
You guys have a copy of this.
Okay.
It's the proposal, that proposal.
Thank you. Would you have one extra one? Thank you. If not, we can make them certainly.
We have the pleasure of coming before the board again this morning to seek out a stormwater education grant. The board has granted several in the past. It would be our desire to see a park of some kind for stormwater purposes at all of the schools in the county, and that would be a lofty goal. We're getting there step by step as we go. Today we have with us the folks from Garfield School District, and I guess I should start by saying that Lynn is largely responsible for our education side of the program, working under James, and she does a tremendous job. We don't recognize her, but I have had several people tell me what a good education program we have, and she leads it and does quite well, so I'm grateful for that. And I'm going to ask her, if she would, to introduce the folks from Garfield and give you a little bit of background or whatever she wants to do regarding the grant.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, first of all, the superintendent, Ted Lysick, was planning on being here today, and they had an emergency come up at school that drew him away. But this is Rob Wright. He's a fourth grade teacher at Garfield Elementary, and he is the main teacher that we've worked with on this grant. His program and the other science teacher that works with him would be the folks that are largely utilizing the land lab that is the and nature trail that's the major part of this request. So.
All right. Well,
I think you're up.
You're in charge.
Well,
Rob.
I'm a teacher, and I work with 9 and 10-year-olds, so this is new. But what I'm looking forward to is what I'd like to do is just offer the kids hands-on experience out there. So having materials available, we do use our campus. There's stuff already there, but giving them an opportunity to do some research out there, bring it back to the classroom, share it with their parents and the community that way. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
So this proposal includes the area right now where Rob can take the kids. He can barely get the kids out to the area that can be used and get them back in the classroom in time to act. There's really no time. By the time he's there and back, there's no time to do anything once he gets them there. This proposed nature trail, and you have copies of it, is really close to the school. He can get them out there in 5 minutes, spend all the time hands-on. We've had foresters from the Division of Forestry come up, and they've looked at the area and identified some kind of interesting features that can be used as part of the land lab that expands around the nature trail. The nature trail, if you look at your package here, this picture right here, this was designed by a senior high art student. And our goal to try to provide a little community education along this nature trail is to install interpretive signs. The interpretive signs, the textual part, has been already put together by the Division of Forestry, and the students would then do the art design and try to install these along the path, so there would be interpretive signs there for the community at large to have educational value as it relates to stormwater and clean water.
Very nice.
The proposal also includes, which Rob did not work, I did work with a couple of other teachers on, that we're proposing to install a rain garden, which is a wonderful stormwater feature. Most schools, it's not appropriate because the roofs are too large and the rain garden is a smaller retention area. In this particular location, there is one small area of roof over the library that discharges, and it's small, like what you would find at a home-size rain garden. It's a small area that's being drained from that roof. We propose installing the rain garden there, and the kindergarten and the first grade schoolrooms look out over that area where the rain garden would be. So to try to meet some of their learning standards, we also propose installing wind socks, rain gauges, thermometers, because those are the kinds of things that those kids are learning about, and they can walk right outside their window. We propose putting some bird feeders in there so they can watch some wildlife. The plants that would be installed in the rain garden are also native plants, which attract a lot of native insects and native birds, and maybe not native birds as well. So, but another opportunity for them to study some things that are going on outside the classroom. That's pretty much the bulk.
Circle is where the
That's where the nature trail would be, yes. And the land lab is, and there's an intermittent stream that runs through that area, which provides an opportunity to talk about riparian areas and intermittent streams and how even natural areas impact stormwater and water quality and runoff. So,
and the total cost is for the entire project is $23,955.
right.
I noticed on the proposal that there's going to be a bridge 10 by 6 feet,
Right.
but no rail. Would that meet the building standards?
That's a very good question. That's a good question. I mean, we could certainly add that to it, but I really hadn't even thought about that.
If the distance from the platform to the ground is
I think
small enough.
It's just a little footbridge. It's not high.
Okay,
it's
if it's really
a foot
low.
or less is what the guys are
I think
saying.
it won't be more than a foot high.
Oh, okay.
So,
It's,
yeah.
the stream is intermittent. It's more to keep
If
them
it's
out of
higher,
mud
I
than,
think you need a rail.
yeah.
If you had a
That's something to check into though anyway.
We will affirm it, but
Right.
I'm pretty sure that it isn't required because of that.
Yeah, that's,
Because of the height. It's very shallow.
well, if it's necessary, we would just make the adjustment. in the
Okay.
budget.
okay.
It sounds very exciting, and so I hope we get the grant.
So would you, and the funds are available, Mickey?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Would
We've continued to have the board
Yes.
set aside $75,000 each year in the hopes of being able to get to each of the school districts and
Yes.
set up a lab there, so we're fine with that.
Yeah.
We also have asked, and I'm sorry, but we've
go ahead.
also asked or advised the school districts that 25,000 per each is an appropriate target, and we're trying to stay at that threshold. So they have come up with a plan that accomplishes both.
How many do we already have completed?
James, help me.
We have
Southeast.
Our lane.
Waterloo, Southeast,
Yeah,
Crestwood,
right.
um,
And now
Field.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
Right.
So we're getting there. That's good.
Yes,
It's wonderful.
which is what we're,
You're trying like for one a year, is that what you're doing maybe, or?
it depends how they fall, but yes,
Yeah.
at least, yes,
Sure.
that's an honest answer, but
Okay.
in the budget, the 25,000 would be 3 a year.
Okay.
Is what would be the goal.
Right.
We're down to,
We've got
the
Wyndham
major
and
school
West
district that's
Town.
going to be left at this point would be Rootstown.
Yeah.
That we're still trying to work with and get that interest.
Some of the folks at the schools are a little bit easier than some of the other folks to work with regarding this.
Sure,
and,
that's with
you know,
everything, Ricky.
Yeah,
That's-
you've gotta find a niche within, and Lynn's really good at it, but you have to find a niche within, one or two of the teachers
Sure.
who can be a champion for the project
Sure.
and push it forward, and she's very good at achieving that for us.
This is a teacher that's.
And I've enjoyed it. It's
Yes.
been great.
Would you like a journal entry authorizing this?
I think that's all we did it in the past, I think.
Do we need a resolution?
We'll be happy to do a resolution, yes.
We'll be doing the resolution, will come through next, when we get the contract
All right.
together.
Oh, you'll be doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We'll route a contract through, just like we did with the other ones.
Okay.
Sure. Well, then why don't we
And-
just,
and that-
for today's purposes, by journal entry, accept the,
Okay, sure.
so we'll have that for today's journal entry. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Kids
you.
will be very
There's
appreciative.
a lot that went behind this.
Yes, yes.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to start the day off.
Yes, it is.
Lynn, thank
always
you. Thank
helps.
you for your
Yes, it does,
effort.
Vicki. It does.
Mike, we have 3 copies. Would you like one of them? And Amy can make some extra. Well, that's always a good way to start.
It is a good way to start the day.
Would you like us to go to resolutions?
Yes. that would be- We need, yeah. You see, Joanna and Jim Reader out there telling us it's over.
I'll stop in.
How are you?
That's a
Ellen?
different story. Right, and then this is, right. Yeah, I think that needs to be a cost share kind of a program with those.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Merry
Bye
Christmas.
now. Merry Christmas to you all.
Got all those Christmas gifts bought already?
Oh my gosh, if I had time, I'd show you so much video right now. Santa Claus
Oh, I
and
bet, I bet.
German dancing
There you
and,
go.
so she can sing happy birthday in German now.
Oh,
so
all right.
That's fantastic.
I can't even sing happy birthday in English.
All right, so it's wonderful.
Is that what we're
See
doing?
you later, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Before we start, you probably both received an email from Michelle this morning. I spoke with the sheriff about 10 minutes ago. And one of the deputies on his way to work this morning was in a very serious accident,
I
unfortunately.
didn't see that morning.
And his vehicle was pushed in front of a semi.
Oh, my
So the
gosh.
sheriff is on his way to Akron City, and he will not be in our.
No, I did not see that email.
So I told him certainly our thoughts and anything, I extended, if there was anything we could do for the family,
Yeah.
to please let us know.
Sure. Okay, well, Jeff is here, so you want to go with.
Sure, of course.
What? Oh,
Sure.
okay, are they on their way, or?
You're ahead.
Okay. Motion to accept the donations to the Office of the Portage County Dog Warden.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Well,
Motion
there were some
for the
pretty
appointment
hefty,
of-
contributions on there.
Pardon me?
I said there were some pretty hefty.
Yes, yes.
And these are in response to that flyer that he sent out with
Oh,
the
yeah.
renewals,
This is, I'm sorry, this is all a result of,
the flyer.
yeah, yeah.
Advertising is good sometimes. A motion to appoint to serve on the Portage County Community-Based Correction Board. Maybe I should read that one.
I have a question about that one. On the first resolved, it said it's a 3-year effective date from the date of this resolution through March of 16. It should probably be 18.
Well, she's completing the term that Donna Sadler was appointed to.
Yeah.
So this is just a
That's right.
3-year, you're appointed to 3-year terms on this board.
Right.
So it's just 1 year she's going to,
And you'll
okay.
redo it next year.
Donna had been appointed, and so.
All right,
Kelly
thanks.
So is there, did you make the motion?
Yes, I did.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Move to resolution for the general fund fiscal year 2016 annual appropriation measure. I don't have that.
This is the budget.
Okay.
Are you ready to do that without Todd? Have you
No,
completed
let's
it? You're
hold-
waiting?
we wait.
You're holding on to this?
Let's wait for Todd. Motion for the non-general.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Okay, motion to authorize the grant application in the amount of $17,398.61 to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Watercraft Marine Patrol Assistance Grant Program for the Portage County Sheriff.
I'll second it. I have a question. Do we generally match the grant with the general fund?
This one you do.
Yeah, I think we do. I think there's a portion of it. I thought that too when I read it. But previous years, we have provided the match. Do you want to proceed, or do you want to wait for Todd?
I'm okay.
Okay. Then I'll call for all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay.
Motion to accept the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation Safety Intervention Grant.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on the safety grant? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to the appoint to the Ohio Children's Trust Fund Regional Prevention Council.
This is Sarah McCauley and Tammy Devine.
Yes.
I'm sorry, is there a second?
Yes, I did.
Any further discussion on this appointment? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to declare that K-9 Cooper is not needed for use by the Portage County Sheriff's Office and authorize the sale of the Portage County personal property to Deputy Eric Noel.
I'll second it. I think, I would really like to do this, but can we do it without it?
Yes. it
Without,
says needed-
without any kind of advertisement or anything?
On
You
this,
have the
I think
code.
there's a particular section
Yes.
in the law.
I gave you the code.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, you can do it.
There actually are 3 K-9 officers.
Yes.
I spoke with the sheriff about that too, because I felt these are wonderful dogs in service, and then their deputies that work with them will be giving them a home for life. But I suggested that we have a little retirement ceremony
Ooh.
for the 3. And the
Put a little
sheriff,
kerchief.
the sheriff liked that idea, so maybe we can plan on something.
Okay.
Do a proclamation.
Yeah, proclamation.
I knew it.
Ah!
Well, not a proclamation, but
Certificate.
I suggested that, I'll be happy to spring for them. There are some healthy home, bones.
Nylon.
Not bones, well, I'm talking about like something that they can eat, but it's
A
usually.
cake that's already.
Actually Shannon makes homemade
Oh, okay.
biscuits, dog biscuits, so something healthy. Maybe
I bought those Nile bones for gifts for my son's dogs.
Oh.
And Tuffy found them last night, so I'm going to rebuy them. Okay. Motion to declare that K-9 Bronco is not needed for use by the Portage. Oh, we didn't vote, I'm sorry.
All in favor of Officer Cooper? Aye.
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 Thank you, Amy. Motion to declare the K-9 Bronco is not needed for use by the Portage County Sheriff's Office and authorize the sale of the Portage County personal property to Deputy Kevin Nicolino.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. This regulation talks about a nonprofit. I think we've done this before, so it must be okay.
Yeah.
But,
It's B1. If you look on the first page, sell the property by private sale without advertisement or public notification.
okay. We're selling it for $1, right?
Right.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to declare that K-9 Charlie is not needed for use by the Portage County Sheriff's Office and authorize the sale of the Portage County personal property to Deputy Ralph Hayes.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion on Deputy Charlie? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Do we want to wait for Todd? for
Yes,
these?
I would suggest that we do. And I imagine maybe we could do the transfer.
Jeff, is there anything we can take care of before they come up? Is Todd and Janet on their way?
We could go to discussion.
And Denise too.
Oh, Denise, yeah.
We could go to discussion.
Okay.
Let me just get I wanted to keep all my general fund and non-general fund things together. Okay, discussion. Okay, are we ready to talk about the discussion items?
Sure.
Okey-doke. The first is Dave Vaughn's response to an inquiry on, I know I had had a concern about the default of any of the RLFs and information on that, and he sent this, which is pretty optimistic, really, in the sense of what's been done.
Right.
With a default rate of only 3.45.
You know, I was curious about it, is that I thought we only had 350,000 in that account.
Yeah, this is gonna have to be cleared up by Todd, because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure about those
Yeah,
numbers, because that's
So
what
I agree.
so we could hold this for when
Yeah, Todd has to be,
Our current balance,
and I
yes.
mean, even he says, Todd indicated the county made some obligations which would not show. I've asked Caitlin to flip these amounts with Todd, so evidently Todd's got something on
Unless
this.
it's a different RLF or something else, but I thought we had 300,000,
That's,
and that's all we had.
That's
So
what I
this-
thought.
yeah. So we'll hold this for Todd.
sure.
Okay. Oops.
Number 2, Todd Peets is asking for a letter of support for the New Horizon grant.
yes, and
We have a lot of things.
Yeah.
for Todd. And the next is from Todd Peets on the Fair Housing Grant.
Right,
I got the letter.
sure.
Good.
So that was a good idea.
Do a journal entry of approval.
Yes.
Number 3 would require a resolution. This is a
To
request,
vacate Garfield Road?
Ravenna Township.
There's a question about whether or not we view the property. I think we have an obligation.
I couldn't find it in the code. I'd asked the
Yeah, it may
prosecutor.
not be legally
Right.
required, but I think if we're going to take action on vacation, we should at least have a chance to see.
Now, do we personally have to
No,
go
no,
up?
you go as a board.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's set at either the 14th of January or the 19th of January.
okay.
The 19th will give us a little bit more
January 14th to
time.
19th, that'll be fun.
The 19th will be a better date, because we have some
Okay.
things to do here. And then at 8:30 in the morning, is that too early
That's
for you to
fine.
view it? You meet out there as a board and you
That's
view
fine.
it? Okay, all right.
We've done that before.
Oh, yeah, you do it every time. This is a different section of the code, because the township is
There
actually,
was one I recall in Twin Lakes, we couldn't find it. It was, the grass had grown over the fence.
Okay, then I'm gonna have to follow somebody out there. Okay, so that would be January the 18th through.
the 19th.
19th.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
get
get on your
reminders.
calendar.
Oh, I'm sure, I'm
Right, so
sure.
you would need a resolution, and it's in your packet, to set the date and time.
Shall we go ahead and do the
Yes,
resolution?
please.
Sure. We're going to set the date, January
19th.
19th, 2016, at 8:30 in the morning, to view the vacation of Garfield Road, TH 578, which I'm not sure what that means. What does that
Township
mean?
Highway.
Okay, Township Highway, in Ravenna Township, Portage County.
And also, we're setting the date for the public hearing. Isn't that?
Okay.
Yes.
The public hearing.
Set both those dates, right?
Okay.
Date and time.
And they're
Okay.
both January 19th, correct?
Yes.
Is,
I'll second the
Todd-
motion.
Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion passes.
Is Todd out there? And Denise, okay, neither one.
The referred items, very quickly, the one is the summons, of course, regarding Mr. Ames'
Right.
suits. And the other two have been referred to RPC, and I'm not sure what the last one was. But the one that I read, and maybe Jeff, you're going to talk about that this morning, was on the, is it the ethnicity? And having to indicate that when someone
Yeah, that was
takes,
something that
applies for a
USDA.
permit?
Yeah, they put that on our permit form.
I did have a suggestion concerning that.
Whoops.
Is that number 3?
No, it's in Jeff's packet, water
Oh,
resources
it's in
packet.
Jen's packet.
We can
He is doing it, right?
Well, shall we discuss it then later when he
Yes.
comes up?
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, please add to the agenda. Do you want to do that? Or are you done with your income?
Oh, there's our finance guy.
Yeah, right.
Now we just need Denise, right?
I'd like to discuss number 1 and I'll refer it when Denise is here.
All right.
Is she on her way, Amy?
Yeah, I just asked them to call.
Do you want to talk about that now?
Is there? No, she wants Denise here.
When Denise is here.
Oh, when Denise is
Yeah.
here.
Is there anything we can do before Denise comes?
Yes, we can get Todd and do the ones that they missed.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Okay. Todd, we have several things we found.
The resolutions.
Oh, okay.
Because we wanted you here to be able to present them and to ask them questions. So, it's all on the,
Resolution 11.
Is that the budget amendments?
right.
Yes.
The
Okay,
general
yeah.
fund for 2016 and the non-general, and then there were the amendments for the 2015. So how would you like to start? You want to do
Yeah,
the
the
amendments?
first two are, you have the attachments for those.
Right.
The general fund is to do the phones, and the Board of Elections received notice that they're going to have to do some extra work regarding, I guess, recounts. That's not quite it, but anyway, that moves money for them to pay their staff. So that's a general fund level.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I so move, amend to the general fund 2015 annual appropriation resolution number 14-0941 adopted December 11th, 2014. Should that be
That's number 11 on our,
Yeah, it should be to the
15, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's number 11.
these are for phones.
The November phone charges, and then the Board of Election move, yeah.
Why are we doing the phones separately like that?
We had the new phone system that we were supposed to be on this year. So originally, we put all the budget in the Commissioner Other.
Oh, okay.
And then as the charges came, we were moving budget until we got onto the new system and we knew how much everybody was going to have to
So
pay.
that's why we're moving it now from.
Correct. We ended up being the whole year on the old system.
Okay.
But they just processed the November charges.
Okay, so is there a
I'll
second?
second the motion.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Amy.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
I think probably all of these should be 2015, shouldn't they? Todd?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Did I get in this 14?
Yeah.
Oh, because they were on the regular.
Motion to amend to the non-general fund 2015 annual appropriation resolution number 14-0942. Should that be 15-09?
No, that should be 14 because we
Okay,
passed at
okay.
the end of that year, yeah.
Adopted December 11th, 2014.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please, Amy.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Then the next two are blank budget
Right.
amendments that we would process Christmas Eve if needed.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the last time when we did this, we had a provision that said that the commissioners would be informed prior
And
to
absolutely,
taking
yeah.
action. But that's not in the resolution, so I'm thinking.
You can
it
add
should
that
be-
in, yeah.
Could be added.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, do you want to proceed with the
Okay.
resolution on that will be added?
That's for 13, 14, 15.
Correct, yeah, two budget amendments and a transfer.
Motion to amend to the general fund 2015 annual appropriation resolution number 14-0941 adopted December 15th, 2015, with the commissioners being notified if there's going to be any action.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Motion to amend to the non-general fund 2015 annual appropriation resolution number 14-0942 adopted December 11th, 2015, with the commissioners being notified if there's going to be any action.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call.
Vicki?
Yes,
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
and I have nothing for 15, so
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, there should have been a blank. It's a transfer from fund to be determined to fund to be determined.
so moved.
With the commissioners being notified.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I'll second the
Any
motion.
further discussion? Roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We did 3 and 4. We haven't done 3 and 4.
We won't do those until we, I would think we would do them until maybe after we.
Discussion.
The budget.
Yeah. we have
Discussion or not? Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
I would think we'd want to approve the budget first. Who's next? Are you all together?
Jeff is next, and he needed Janet,
Just have
Todd, and Denise, right? Jeff needed the game.
Okay. Jeff and Janet.
Everybody.
If your name begins with a J, come on up. Oh, and Denise. I'm sorry.
Should we do the first item about the USDA first?
Sure, let me
Bring a chair up, Jim.
get your.
Actually, I'm going after this one. So.
I was doing so well, but now I've completely lost my place here. I had your agenda. And you think we're gonna go paperless, right? Yes, we're going to. I'm sorry. Just, here you are. Okay. Okay. Jeff?
Okay.
Start.
Todd and I met about a month ago with a representative from USDA,
Yeah.
and they were performing a compliance review for funding that we'd received at Randolph, and I believe might have included the Manaway.
Randolph for the sewer, and then RPC for their building renovations that they had done.
During that meeting, they had indicated that we need to begin documenting race, ethnicity on our permits when we issue a permit for sewer or water. So Todd and I had asked Denise for her opinion. Basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but he said there's nothing that legally requires us to do it, but if USDA wants us to, then it's pretty much the board's decision.
You know, to me, I mean, I'm not going to object or anything, but this kind of brings up
Yeah.
a reason for discrimination, but am I wrong?
Yeah, it does. I agree. It's like we're not putting things like this on employment apps. and
Exactly.
Other things, but we can put it on permits.
I was
Where
looking
people
forward
makes
to why-
absolutely no sense.
And what's the purpose for them?
So they can account for who we're giving permits to and who we're not giving permits.
It's to,
Okay.
I think that's what it's for.
it's to demonstrate that we're not discriminating.
Yeah, but in,
By even asking, I think. they're
but by
discriminating.
asking it, it makes,
Yeah,
I
that's.
mean,
I think they're discriminating by
because the
asking.
contractor comes in and asks for the permit most of the time, doesn't it? It's not-
Probably half the time, yes.
Yeah, it's not the homeowner, so I have no idea.
So the contractor
What the
certainly
homeowner
not
looks like.
Yeah.
And now I gotta ask
See
him.
about this RLF.
That's just,
And if they don't feel like filling it out, we're supposed to guess.
Oh,
So-
Jeff, I think that'd be
yeah,
dangerous.
by where they live, I
If
mean,
we,
that's exactly.
if we
playing into-
decide to ask them to voluntarily provide the information, we should leave out, however, if you choose not to furnish it, we will do it for you.
Oh, no.
I think that has to come out for sure.
For sure, and I think you put the parentheses optional.
Yeah.
That was their recommended language, right?
Yes,
I mean,
it
that
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Denise, you
You know what,
think,
if it's not illegal, it's offensive. I think it's offensive.
I don't disagree.
but you think to be safe, we should do this, I mean.
Were they giving you any consequences if you don't?
She indicates will be non-compliant
Oh,
um,
With,
with the, what do they call this? The
The
equity review or whatever. it is.
Compliance review,
Compliance
civil rights
review.
compliance review.
Whether that would trigger them
This is so odd.
calling the loan due, I don't know. You know,
I wouldn't want you
That's
to
why
have
we
a
came to the board.
non-compliance kind of finding or notation. Therefore, if you do it, just put optional, like disclosure optional, something like that.
like she indicated, even if they don't fill it in, they still want us making guesses in order to
I don't
remain
think we should do
compliant.
That I do not recommend. I do not.
It says the following information regarding race, national origin, and gender is requested to assure the federal government acting through rural development that the county of Portage is complying with federal laws prohibiting discrimination against applicants. You are not required to provide this information, but are encouraged to do so.
That's fine.
This information will not be used in evaluating your application or to discriminate against you in any way, period, but I don't think we should put the rest of it in.
I would agree. So are we going to be non-compliant if we don't put the rest of it in
No,
there?
I don't
Okay.
Could it be even a separate page that doesn't get filed with the,
That's true. It could be a separate page.
I mean, all those goes, so we never know the applicant versus the,
Yeah.
but at least we have a record of who applied,
Yeah.
but it's not in the file with the applicant. I mean, that's my
I was just really
thought.
taken back by this. I thought, wow, we're moving.
I think everyone was.
Well, it is hard to enforce non-discrimination if you don't know what the facts are. So the idea is to make sure that we're not discriminating. And
I know if I
I
ever
think
come
it's
up with
discriminatory
anything
to
like this, I
single
wouldn't
that.
fill it out.
I never fill it
I think it's discriminatory to single that out and call attention to it, but
Well, I find it,
do what's necessary.
We want to do.
it's me
yeah,
personally.
That's right.
I can't ask you if you've been convicted of a felony, but I can ask you
Yeah,
what
what
race you are. That is offensive to me.
I agree.
Because I think there's a valid reason for asking if you've been convicted of a felony, but there is no valid for me to ask what race you are.
All right, how are we
Well,
proceeding?
I think we need to do what legal counsel.
Journal entry, do you want to accept that?
yeah,
All right,
with
well,
with that amendment to the form.
all right, we will add that to today's journal entries meeting with the allocation
However,
that.
though, because we're not going to
that-
change what they are.
That form will be
That's the
amended.
last
Yeah,
sentence.
you're instructing not
Yeah.
to, not to get.
Right.
Okay.
Is that all in open session?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session regarding employment, personnel,
And imminent litigation.
eminent litigation.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call, please. Edie.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, are you doing this?
No, the rest of it's not on yet.
Okay.
I think you took my red sheet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Does it say Casey
You're right,
on
it's
it?
got your,
Thanks,
I'm just taking anything that's in my,
thanks.
is this yours? No, this was.
I think I have everything.
Did you, oh, you have this?
Is that from Jeff?
I may have taken that from you too.
No, I have this, thanks.
Okay.
Oh, I think Brian had kind of a good end.
Well, we got a plan of action, we'll see.
It's always good to have a plan.
One of
Let me
the,
know when you're ready to exit.
not so long ago, the adult probation did redid their personnel manual as well as a operations manual. We made them two separate annuals. Kathy Poling and Teresa did a lot of work on that.
Motion to come out of
And
executive
that
session.
just came up with,
Roll call, please,
it's a
Edie.
good way to do these things.
Yes.
Two different manuals.
Yes. Yes, there is action. And Janet has the.
I think Deb had it, you're going to
Oh,
rescind the
all
journal
right.
entry.
Deb, go
I
ahead.
think Deb
Go ahead,
gave you,
Vicki, go ahead.
I think Deb gave her all that stuff.
Oh, all right, the recension of,
We're rescinding one journal entry and then there's others.
and then posting, yeah, posting positions and hiring.
Okay.
Okay,
where are
we can move
Where
on.
are we here?
All right.
Oh, prosecutor's office.
My-
You're actually
yeah.
in the right place, right?
They do my sideways list,
You're sideways, okay.
my sideways list. That was
Got it.
that one.
Got your sideways.
Got that, and then I'm gonna start at the bottom and go up, if that's okay. Okay. Agenda number 12 about the Park District's request for property that has been referred to Chris Maduri, and he will get back to you.
Right.
I have nothing to report on number 11, which was the Hiram Township issues. I have nothing to report, there's nothing, it's just ongoing, that Freedom Township lawsuit. Nothing to report on Duracoat, other than the fence has been moved, the bill has been paid by Duracoat. They're waiting for the surveyor to come up with a description so we can do
easement agreement with them.
And then that should be taken off.
And then that will be taken off once I get, it just, surveys seems to take forever to get. Surveyors seem to be very busy people, or there's not many of them, I'm not which it is.
I think it's
Number 7 and number 4 are both executive session issues that we can do at the end. Nothing to report on number 6. The HR thing, Jen and I are getting together tomorrow. I guess you wanted MOU or something for that.
right.
Okay. Number 3, there's nothing to report right now, because, again, that's something I'm researching on,
Oh, good.
what boards are official boards that need a organizational and minutes and all those sorts of things. Nothing to report on the Aurora East subdivision, and I don't know what you, on the wireless.
Oh,
That's not executive session material. Just as a recap, we know that Aurora has taken the position of they still want to continue as a PSAP. I will tell you that under 12803, Aurora must be and is a part of our countywide 911 plan, and therefore falls under, like everybody does, on the authority of the 911 Planning Committee. That committee has the authority to say who's a PSAP and who isn't. And so what action they do or do not want to take will be up to that committee. I know they had reservations about compelling Aurora to not, well, compelling Streetsboro to take Aurora's calls and keeping Aurora off the PSAP list.
well, but that was predicated on, we had passed a resolution. We had it down to 4 PSAPs.
It was
and-
predicated on their chief saying that was a good idea
Well,
and consenting.
And I think also the administration, if the mayor could, he did tell us he would have to go to council. But Streetsboro, in essence, is going to be the lead in the sense of routing the calls.
Right.
So
But Aurora
the three of
refuses
us
to
had a phone
relinquish it
conversation with
calls.
Mayor Wilmer Benjamin, and this is not their desire. So they don't want any money. They just want to be left
The
alone.
problem with that is if we don't reduce by those 4 PSAPs by January 1, the county-wide is going to lose 50% of their GAF money.
That, right,
So,
we understand.
I don't know if the 911 committee wants to reconsider compelling Aurora to reduce.
Well, we were very reluctant to do so.
I realize that.
And with our conversation with the mayor, after that concluded, again, I think we just didn't want to follow that path. There are a couple of emails, and I copied you on them, Denise.
I have seen them.
Between Dave Wurler and I yesterday. His concerns, of course, are for, as they are all of us, the loss of the money. And I was hoping, Todd, we could get a finite on how much money we're going to.
We're going to lose 50% of our GAF, period.
But when we had the conversation with the state 2 weeks ago, I thought once we came into compliance.
But the problem is if Aurora won't relinquish its calls, and if the
we-
911 committee won't make it
So there-
relinquish
there's
its
no
calls,
recourse.
we're not going to be compliant.
Well, I would just anticipate we're going to see a lawsuit come out of this if we try to compel
Well,
Aurora.
that may be. I would say 2 things. One, we're going to lose 50% of our funding.
Right.
The 911 committee, that's their decision. We need to do something about that AT&T contract
Well, the
soon.
AT&T contract is another issue. Ryan is here, too. We had a conversation, an email yesterday about that, and the fact, let me back up further to our conversation when we called Mayor Wilmer Benjamin. We all thought, and Dean Todd Bigley also attended that a new MOU obviously would be in order, and that we have to inform the jurisdictions of Aurora's decision, but I suppose maybe that's preemptive.
Maybe this isn't even an idea, but is there a reason that Streetsboro couldn't come under Aurora? And I'm not saying that's what we should do.
I have
don't
no
know.
idea. I would
Would
imagine,
they-
just listening to Mayor Braska, he wasn't even certain, if you'll recall, that his council would approve.
I understand. Right.
So that would be up to the mayor and council.
Would that work, though, if Streetsboro were willing to go under Aurora? Would that work?
I don't know, Ryan?
The bottom line,
Has that ever been suggested?
The only reason why Aurora was that first one discussed was
Yeah.
because they received significantly the less amount of 911 calls than any other jurisdiction. They received
Okay,
about
I see.
2,000,
I got
Streetsboro
you.
was in the
I
5,000
got
range.
you.
So
I got
it
you.
made sense to move the 2 instead of
Okay.
5.
Well,
Okay.
but, this was, both the chiefs from Aurora, fire and police, were fairly adamant at the time that this is the
That
configuration.
Aurora would be under
Yes, this is
Streetsboro.
the configuration they wanted. But anyway,
the bottom line is
Yeah,
that
we're gonna
the
move
committee, the 911 committee already made the decision about the 4 PSAPs. And unless they change their minds about that, that's the way it is.
They made a recommendation that
Right.
Aurora not receive the phone, be a
Yes,
PSAP
right,
anymore.
right.
They would have to reconvene, the committee would have to
Exactly, yeah.
reconvene to compel Aurora and say, you're no
Right.
longer a PSAP.
I thought that what happened at that meeting was that they declared what the 4 PSAPs were.
Ryan, what,
we passed a resolution of the floor.
Yeah, the resolution should be available.
Patty has them drafted, I think, sent to everybody. No,
Well,
it
if-
was-
so we're not
I'm
sure.
sure Aurora ever told us, other than the phone conversation. I just know that,
We've
that-
had meetings for 2 years now.
right,
That's
well, but
always
the
been our
mayor,
impression.
the mayor wasn't in those
Well,
meetings.
she was invited.
Yeah,
to
well,
every single one.
but that still doesn't, the mayor has said they do not want to be part of, they evidently have the funds to pay for the equipment.
Well, I think it depends on what that resolution says. I mean,
Yeah.
Kathleen brought up another point here. If it's been declared, we've
Well,
already,
this was,
I don't
yeah.
know.
We have a copy of it, we have minutes.
Yeah, Dave and I, did that get, I'm trying to think if it got sent out to Aurora. I don't know.
Do you have that, Ryan?
And was there any discussion with Aurora on the MOU?
The minutes were sent to the 911 planning committee.
Is what?
That me and Denise went to Aurora and discussed the MOU with Dean DePirio. And then the minutes were sent to the 911 planning committee for approval.
But was Aurora actually sent a copy of that resolution or informed?
No, they were drafted resolutions, so you made sure the language was appropriate. That's what we said.
All right,
So
so
Patty
do we
drafted
even
the
have-
resolutions, sent them to the 911.
Do we even have the finalized resolution? I thought we did.
Denise, I'm not sure where they were at. I know we sent them for final approval.
they've been sent for final approval. I know I gave my final approval.
On that.
I don't know if anybody on the 911 committee has signed the resolutions.
No, I don't think so.
They
or
voted in
they
a public
voted.
meeting, and there are minutes, and the decision was made.
I understand that, but the reservation has been by that committee that
Right.
they do not want to follow through and compel Aurora to
Right.
do that.
That
That-
committee
that was
hasn't even
predicated-
met to discuss that.
That was
at
also
this
based
point.
upon the fact we thought we had the concurrence from Aurora and
My
Streetsboro.
individual discussions with those committee members, all
Right.
3 said they would not compel at this point.
That's after the fact, right?
Right,
Yes.
But they haven't met and made that a formal.
that's true.
Well, I can tell you that that's our posture.
But part of the,
But we are also very concerned about losing the money. So it almost comes down to, if Aurora does not comply with this, it's costing the county, the rest of the jurisdictions, 50% of those funds.
right. I think my recommendation at this point with Brian, who's gone above and
Yes.
beyond the call of duty these days, is that we reconvene that committee meeting right after the first of the year. I mean, there's no time to do it right now.
No.
For lots of different reasons, one being it's almost Christmas and I'm on vacation, and a lot of people are on
Right, right.
vacation. My recommendation will be to reconvene that committee after the first of the year and say all of this. We're at that point, let's see if the DAS is going to continue to, with Aurora's new position, new stance, if they're still going to reduce our GF money by 50%. Let me add this one more factor. I spoke with the chief of the opinion section at the AG's office yesterday. The opinion has been written. It is being cleared by the Attorney General. He would not give me even a hint of what that opinion says. I could not tell from his voice because it was like talking to Mr. Spock on the phone. I just could not tell what it was. He didn't give me it's a good idea or a bad idea,
gosh.
nothing.
Any
So
idea
he
when
said
it'll
it
come
would
out?
be issued before January 1.
Oh, it
He
will be?
said it will be issued before January 1.
Could this be a moot
Which
point?
could make this a moot point, or it could bring it to a
Or it
head.
could-
Bring it to a head,
could
one
be
or
a-
the other.
There
It
are
could
only,
be cause for disaster.
there are only 3 people on that committee. There's no reason that they can't meet before January 1st.
There is reason,
because
Kathleen,
if I
because
could
I've already
finish-
talked with them.
May I finish?
No, you weren't part of this meeting, and you're trying to supersede exactly what has been done by that committee, and
I think I have the right to give my opinion. at
you can
this
give your
point.
opinion,
All
but you're
right.
not meeting.
Thank you very much. It seems like if we wait till after January 1st, we'll lose the money unless the AG's opinion is in our favor. That's a very risky thing to do. So my thinking is that we should make a decision to protect that money prior to January 1st.
There's a couple other factors. The resolution was not a recommendation, it was a decision to reduce the force, so we'll just clear that up. Secondly, the AT&T is not going to be able to reroute the towers by January 1st as it is, so it looks like whatever funds we would receive in January are going to be reduced by 50%. But
No
at least it's
matter what.
At least it's 1 month versus multiple months. And that's out of our hands, and that's with AT&T, and I still can't reroute the towers from Aurora or Streetsboro yet until I receive.
Well,
the money.
obviously, there was some breakdown between Aurora and Streetsboro, because when we met and did the resolution, it was predicated on all of them agreeing.
And I agree, and I think there's 2 factors that made Aurora take this position. One was in the ESI-Net Steering Committee, they were
Transferring calls.
going to propose a change in legislation that a PSAP can remain a PSAP as long as they don't use GAF funds and we don't disperse to them.
Right.
Let me check it up, and let's see, so I had to meet all the standards, and also the second thing was they were gonna have to reimburse the county the GAF funds they've received over the last 5 years or so. Those 2 things right there is what made Aurora take this position. Now, if they wanna do the rogue thing and be their same PSAP, they're still not gonna be able to use these GAF funds they've accumulated over the last 5 years, which kind of brings the confusion to my part of why they wanna do this.
And they can't be their own PSAP unless that committee
Right,
says it's
right.
okay.
Yeah, well, I got the distinct impression the PSAP designation had absolutely nothing to do with it. I mean, they weren't thinking in the terms of PSAP, they were thinking in the terms of Aurora and having the ability and the finances to support their effort.
I was more under the impression that losing their wireless call taking ability was more of an
Yeah.
influence on them.
Well, you know, and the legitimacy, we talked about that, particularly the mayor and I think has to do with transferring of calls. No jurisdiction really wants to think
Absolutely, and I agree.
that they're at risk by transferring calls. I know you don't want to hear me repeat this again, but that tragedy in Cleveland where they transfer the calls, Cuyahoga County, cost that 90 minutes before there was a response.
Seconds. 90 seconds, not 90 minutes.
Oh, 90, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes, you're
that's,
right. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's
But
all right, I just
anyway,
wanted
that
to-
little 5-month-old, and, you know, maybe you can't equate that totally with that, but that's what the communities, and that's what the jurisdictions and the authorities relate to, is they don't want those calls transferred. And so, in that sense, I think we understood that with Aurora.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, but-
No one in the county wants to see that happen. But I think
No,
the
no,
state-
no one wants to see it happen, so I would think we are painfully aware of the consequence, and we will convene as soon as those other 2 schedules will permit also. Denise, I am concerned, though, as to how we should proceed in informing the other jurisdictions such as, well, the sheriff. The sheriff was going to be here, but there was
Should we wait?
horrible
There was bad
accident this
accent to
morning.
that, yes.
Should we wait for that AG opinion since it's going to be before January 1st? I mean, I don't know. Of course, you may not be here the day it comes, or none of us may be here the day it comes.
Christmas Eve.
Well, Ryan's point about not being able to, is it reconfigure or switch over for the towers.
AT&T can't.
Right, and there's already a
reconfigure.
cutoff with AT&T, right? They're not gonna
December
go-
18th, they shut down, and that was their main reason why they would not
Right,
operate
right.
off towers.
The good news, though, is that even in this, the AT&T costs would not increase, even with losing Aurora.
Well, that's the
Correct. I
question.
mean,
Do they
it
want
has
to do
been-
their own system they want to do
Right.
their own thing,
Right.
or they still want to be on the hosted
Right.
solution, what are they doing?
Yeah,
What
right.
vendor are they going with? How's
Well,
it? they're
we talked
impacting the
very
entire
briefly
county.
that day about divvying up the cost, the difference. And actually, we did talk about how much would be lost in that interim period of time if the other's jurisdictions would, I think Mayor Brasco suggested, kick in to make us whole.
I think the other jurisdictions are going to say,
No.
wait a second,
Yeah.
we agreed to share the costs, and now Aurora won't be part of this. Why should I share the cost?
Yeah.
Maybe the county feels the same way, these Board of Commissioners,
The
because
county's
you're
gonna
the one
lose-
that's losing the
county will lose
most.
the most money.
Yeah, you're the one that's being affected the most.
And the other pressing issue for all of us should be that all this equipment, most of it is end of life.
Yeah, well, that's where the AT&T, I don't know what
Light
the,
equipment and then our new next system.
And I thought from our perspective, the county's percent, we can't let that happen. We cannot.
so I don't know if you're willing to sign that contract with AT&T regardless of the status of the MOU at this point. Right now,
That's some heavy.
the
heavy
GAF
things.
money,
Are you recommending
Is-
that we can't sign it?
oh, you can,
Do sign it, yeah.
and I think it's risking, without signing it
agree.
and getting it done, we're risking the entire system going down.
Right, right,
I
So
Which
also-
is the less of the evils. I
Well,
guess.
that's,
I mean,
yeah, that's called the,
Yeah.
which lawsuit do you want to defend
I agree.
attitude. Right now, with 100% of the GF money, you've got a surplus to use towards that contract, and you should be fine, but that's a lot of shoulds and
The
depends on.
911 committee
in my-
is Dave Ruler and Glenn and Maureen. Is
Right.
it? Okay.
Correct. Now, I also haven't gotten a response back from, my last correspondence with AT&T rep was,
No.
we would like these three things in the contract, choice of law, venue, blah, blah, blah. And I haven't gotten a response back from him or his legal staff yet to say, okay, although we didn't think that was going to be an objection. I just, sometimes I think the whole world goes on
Right.
vacation the last 2 weeks of
Dave
December.
Miller
and
yesterday, He was as concerned about Kent as certainly
Sure.
Ann's focus was on Aurora.
It was my impression when I attended the meeting of the 911 committee that, from what Mr. Broska said, that it was generally accepted by Aurora. Did I have a misperception?
Oh, it was.
It was, as it was conveyed.
It was.
The chief has even told me that he said he would make the same decision, and has told the mayor that it was the right decision, but it's still not received.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much.
Yeah,
weight
the
that
chief
has.
did not change his mind when he left this room. His recommendation to the mayor was accept this
Both-
situation.
Ann had both of the chiefs in the room when we had the conference call. Neither of them expressed any opposition to proceeding the way Aurora wanted to proceed.
Well-
And obviously, they would not. They would not.
Their boss in the room.
I mean, we're concerned about being able to respond to their calls.
Well, the decision has been made that we have 4 PSAPs. So the question would be
Will DS
whether or not
accept?
they want to change their mind, and if so, they have to meet to do that, and whether or not the AG's opinion comes forward. If they come forward in our favor, then we don't really have a problem, I guess.
I also don't know if DAS's position is going to be, okay, you gave us the resolution that
Yeah.
says you're reduced, we won't take away your funding, or are their position going to be, until I see those calls rerouted, I'm going to take away your funding?
I think this call is rerouted anyways, from the conference call we had.
Well, hopefully the AG's opinion will come
Yeah,
out before all
that
that
conference call,
happens.
Ryan, when you were in the room, again, when we concluded that, everybody was very assured that we were in compliance. However, if we haven't sent the state that,
I think
we gave them the assurance.
We knew they had to go to council
Yeah.
and get the approvals right, and we didn't see this
Yeah.
significance.
Well, it's,
I don't think there's any more that we can say to bring this forward. I mean, I don't. I think there's so many variables, we have to just kind of wait.
I think it's a
well, I
waiting
haven't
game
heard
at this
back
point.
from Mayor Brodsky yet, but I'll try to
He
I'll
emailed
contact him
shortly
again.
ago.
He what?
He emailed shortly ago.
He
He did
emailed you?
email
And
back.
can you share that, or?
I'll read it to you. Bye. said all. I have to echo Dave's thoughts. I am willing to let the legislative process move forward for a short time, but I do not believe if it is looking like it may not come to fruition, I would have to revisit our thoughts. So it looks like he wants to wait to see what the legislature does. I think January is January.
Yeah.
It's going to be what it is.
Right.
And then, so we're not hurt
No,
either way.
right.
Okay.
So I would think that's undoubtedly what we'll
Yep.
do. I will, to satisfy everyone's inquiry here, I will contact them both individually myself after we conclude this morning's meetings. But that was how we left it.
My final thing on here is number 4 and 7, and both of those, that would be executive session for pending
And
litigation.
we have the investment committee people here, and we're running quite late, so.
So up to you if you want to go over these or not.
Would you think this will hold till we could meet again, which is going to be?
I think I need to talk to you about the Brian
All right, then why
Ames
don't we
lawsuit
have a
very
brief
quickly.
executive session?
Yeah, okay.
Very good.
Motion to go into executive session regarding impending litigation or
Pending litigation,
pending
yes.
litigation?
Yes,
Is there a vote? Never mind.
A motion to come out of executive session?
Second. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. No, there is
No.
no action. And we will need, right at the first of the year, we'll address this with Ryan. about
Right,
this communication.
Right.
Signing at meetings. Sorry for the long wait.
Yes, yes.
That's all right. Nature of the beast, right?
Another exciting day.
Now for something completely different.
No executive sessions required.
Well, yeah, well, I hope not. I got more to talk about than I thought if we end up there. It's not funny. Okay, so we will distribute these.
And we're going to talk about, taking all of this over and advertising that when we're having these meetings.
That'll we can discuss, yeah. So we'll call the meeting to order then. I'd like to have a motion to approve our minutes from September 24th. You should have a copy of those, I think, right? Okay.
So moved. Oh,
I'm not on it.
So
You two
moved.
are.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, and that motion carries. So that brings us to a discussion of our portfolios then with our new advisor, Eileen Stanek from Meter. So if you
New but
wanna-
old.
Yeah, she's been, apparently, I learned today that she had been here for a long time, actually. 7 years, you said, you worked with the county before.
Yes.
Took a little time off and then came back to Meter because they're so good and do such a nice job for us, which you will see here shortly. So if you want to go ahead and take the ball, that's like, should I shut the door? It's just, there's a little bit
Well,
of,
we don't want anyone thinking we're in executive.
yeah, that's
session.
true. I just,
Well, that executive session's not on there, is it?
It is.
It is?
Yeah,
Take
it is.
Take it on.
Yeah,
Executive
it's
session.
not, we're not in executive session. Let's make that perfectly clear.
only for the sake of hearing.
Sure,
Better.
understood.
All right, all set? All right. Well, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate it. As Brad mentioned, I was with Productive, and I worked on the county's portfolio from mid-2003 through the end of 2010. So, long time, so it's great to be back and great to be helping out the county again. Familiar faces here, so I feel at home. So that all being said, certainly when we look in terms of insofar as the factors that are impacting the county's investment portfolio, the big thing, the big question that we have had for some time is when and if the Fed will raise interest rates, and we will actually know with more certainty tomorrow because the Fed is meeting now. two-day meeting today and tomorrow, and tomorrow they will then make their announcement. Market is clearly anticipating that we will have what they're referring to as liftoff, meaning we will have our first increase in the short-term interest rates, moving off of the zero level that we have been at for the past 7 years, and finally getting onto the path of perhaps returning back to normal as far as monetary policy goes. The one thing we want to keep in mind is, irrespective of the message that we receive tomorrow, is that one message that the Fed has been making very clear is that this time we should anticipate that it will be a different process in interest rates moving back to a more normal path. It will not necessarily be a stair-step fashion like we had in the past, but it will be a much more gradual path. So we may see a first liftoff, and then the Fed will pause, wait to see how the market and the economy reacts, assess conditions, of course, and then make a determination whether they should raise rates again. The other point that we want to keep in mind is, now the Fed, and they've been doing this for some years, is they do issue forecasts of where they feel certain economic indicators will be over a multi-year period, and they additionally issue a forecast of where they believe that the Fed funds rate will be in what they call the longer run. And the long-term target that they have communicated to us is more in the 3 to 3.5% range, and they have additionally made the statement that it will take years to get there.
Yeah.
So definitely being very persistent in communicating this message that it's going to be low and slow for quite some time. The one piece that we tend to sometimes perhaps not have focused on more recently is the fact that during the height of the financial crisis, the Fed expanded their balance sheet through their quantitative easing programs, and once they stopped the quantitative easing, they maintained their balance sheet at a heightened level. And then when they did embark on the quantitative easing, the goal was to impact longer-term interest rates, because we need to remember that the Fed funds rate is the short-term interest rate, and this quantitative easing tool was a way for them to impact the longer-term rates. So now that at some point they proceed with getting monetary policy back to more normal terms, at some point we would expect them to start to prepare the market, start commenting on how they plan on reducing their balance sheet, because as it stands right now, it's in excess of $4 trillion. In the past, it has been more along the lines of $800 billion. So there's some substantial balance sheet issues from the Fed standpoint that we would anticipate will start to become part of the conversation as well. We know that this Fed is very cautious. They're being very cognizant of market reaction, do not want to have, we think back, I think in 2013, under the Bernanke term, we had a tantrum kind of where the Fed had tried to prepare the market that they would start to stop the quantitative easing, and the market reaction was very severe as far as interest rates, and that squashed the improvements we had seen in the housing market. So the Fed is being very cautious and does not want to repeat that. A couple factors that are truly leading into kind of a big broader picture when we think in terms of interest rates is certainly the global slowdown fears. We know, of course, Europe is continuing to struggle to get their economy back on board. Brad and I were talking about how within Europe, their European Central Bank, which is like our Fed, has negative interest rates, and really, how do you wrap your mind around having negative interest rates? But truly, I think that's a sign that of the dire straits that the European economy is in. Europe, of course, is one of our largest trading partners, and that even by going into negative interest rates, they still have not been able to spur their economic growth back to where they would like it to be. And then we add on, of course, what is going on with China. We have, of course, China has been shifting from an economy that is very infrastructure-driven to a consumer-driven economy. And so what that means is where they've gone through a decade of double-digit economic growth, their now latest projections are economic growth around 7%. Now, we would love to have 7% economic growth, but needless to say, going from double-digit down to 7%, and with China being the second largest economy in the world, that slowdown in that growth certainly filters through to everyone, including the U.S. We then, of course, have this whole issue of what's going on with oil. It's a double-edged sword. We love it when we go to the pump, and it's less than $2 a gallon to fill up the tank, but the reality is that with the price of oil having dropped so precipitously, that it's having a deflationary impact on inflation. And additionally, we are now starting to see it have a negative impact on our domestic oil and gas portion of the economy, which certainly was a very bright spot here coming out of the financial crisis. One of the things, and Brad, we were talking about this too, it's truly the supply and demand issue where we have the global demand has dropped, but the supply has continued. And historically, OPEC, particularly the Saudis, have served as a swing producer. So when the price of oil has dropped too far, then the Saudis would cut back production, which would serve to get the price of oil back up. Well, we now are in an environment where the Saudis have said, we're not going to do that. Let the supply and demand factors work their way out, and we'll let oil continue to drop.
What do you attribute that change of mindset to? I mean,
we were talking about that, and
I'm completely baffled.
no, we think it may be that within the Saudi, and we said we're going to get some clarity on this. Kind of an aging or changeover within the powers within the Saudi government.
Well, that makes sense. It really
Yes.
does. Because, the stock market has, some companies that have just recently announced a dividend raise have now taken it away and cut not only the raise where they were in the same couple months.
Right.
That's very unusual.
Right. Yes. It's definitely has created a lot of volatility, and this has also served to, as we've had a strong U.S. dollar, it certainly has been hurting the U.S. economy, U.S. companies from an exporting standpoint, and so consequently, it really has started to flow through
I
the
never
earnings and
thought
dividends.
I would be in the position to say, I wish oil prices would go up. Never.
Well, I know, it's like there has to be someplace, a
A
happy
balance.
medium
Yes,
between,
there has to be a balance.
right, the high of 140 in July of 2009
Yeah.
to where we
Yeah.
are here today,
Yeah. One tying those
About
things
35.
together, the other piece of news this week was the Paris Climate Accord, which may or may not have an impact on that oil price piece at some point. If China and India and your other emerging markets who've signed on to that are going to be cutting their demand, potentially that could have some
Right.
upward
Yeah.
force on the price. But who knows, right? If OPEC
see.
continues to pump it out,
Yes.
and, the Russians are another one that we had talked about who are not cutting
Right.
their production because their economy is where it is, and they kind of need that production to
Right.
prop it up. So,
Right.
a lot of funky stuff happening
Yeah.
in the economy.
Yes, so much global.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interconnected world
Yes.
nowadays, very different than what it was even a decade ago. In that we have all of these outside factors that the U.S. has very limited control over, but yet we have to react to it.
Right.
It does impact us greatly.
Right.
I think the one thing we always, the media tends to focus on the oil and the price of oil and the drop in the price of oil. When we look at other commodities as well, we see this very similar pattern of where the price of the commodities has dropped so much. And it's a function of reduced demand because of reduced growth in countries like China or in the European area, and then of course additionally, within the U.S. that we certainly have not returned to growth numbers that we maybe have had in the past.
Question about the negative interest rate. Does that mean they pay you to borrow money?
Yeah. That's what we said. It's basically, here, take my money, and here's some more.
Right.
Which is just, it's difficult
Just-
to wrap your mind around
Right.
that,
It's
I
amazing.
think.
It is
I'll be
amazing.
doing more research on how that works for them and why,
Right.
they've chosen to go that way.
Yeah, and
That's interesting.
it's very prevalent in the European area. Yeah.
I don't imagine you'd see that. I mean, I can't imagine a world in which the Fed would do that. Maybe it's possible because all things are possible.
All
but,
things are possible. Yeah.
Unlikely, right? I mean, that we get to that point.
Oh,
Well,
The market would explode. I know, right? So
Well-
anyway,
We give grants instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
Right.
interesting,
Yeah.
because in the corporate environment, there have been situations whereby the banks, again, have said, well, if you were going to keep your money in deposit, right, and they get you by the fees. So, if, you know, we give you no interest, and we're going to charge you a fee.
Yeah.
So in essence, that's the same thing, but
That's
it's
my
just
kid, my
one
money in
segment.
my bed or something. But you can have this nice
pickle jar.
tumbler set.
Yeah,
That's
there
right.
you go, toaster.
You can have a nice tumbler.
Yeah. So we want to flip over to page 4, looking, of course, at GDP, and this is one of the pieces that, of course, the Fed follows, and we do as well. And we can certainly see that when we look at GDP growth for the third quarter was at 2%. And it, you know, coming out of the recession here, we've had a little bit of ups and downs, a little sawtooth pattern here. I had mentioned about how the Fed had these long-range forecasts for economic indicators such as GDP, and their long-range forecast for GDP is 2%, which is a step down from where, you know, 5 years ago we would have been talking about trend GDP growth of 3%. So certainly expectations have dropped. Historically, when we looked at the U.S. economy coming out of a recession, we would have a big spike in GDP growth. We would have a continued period of that. We would have GDP growth in that 4, 5, 6% range. That would then serve as an impetus for the Fed to want to raise interest rates to prevent the economy from overheating and from stopping inflation from going out of control. We
This
certainly-
recovery has definitely been different. I mean,
Absolutely.
You know, I read just the other day in the third quarter, we lost 1.2 trillion of investment dollars.
No,
I mean, just in that one quarter.
it's different.
Amazing.
Definitely different.
Yes.
Moving on to page 5, when we look at the inflation picture, again, you know, the price of oil certainly has been impacting this as it serves as a deflationary force on inflation. The Fed has their target of 2%. They would like to see inflation expectations at the 2 to 2.5% area. Inflation has continued to somewhat trend down at last read on the PCE measure, which is the measure that the Fed follows. We're at 1.3%. That compares to the CPI, which is a measure that most people are more familiar with. The CPI measure is a little bit higher, but that's because it includes different components than what the PCE measure does. But we certainly are not at risk of inflation getting out of control. And again, that showing the drop in the price of oil, inflation tends to lag that drop in the price of oil. And we can see the last time we had this huge drop, inflation dropped precipitously shortly thereafter.
You know, it's almost like with the media, though, we're kind of schizophrenic because we tell the consumer, you know, you need to save, you need to be wise with your money. Then the consumer gets criticized for not spending.
Right.
I mean, so it's like,
Can't win.
yeah.
Right. And, you know, and that feeds into the fact, right, that the U.S. economy is driven, you know, our GDP growth, about 70% of it is a result of the consumer. So, yes, in order to keep that GDP growth going, we need the consumer to spend.
Well, and I think that contributes to what you said about it not being a traditional recovery. I think that there has been a reset of expectations, you know, from particularly from younger consumers, where I think there is a more of an impetus on saving. So
Yeah.
And I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's maybe not a bad thing, but it certainly makes
Yeah.
predicting the markets harder, right?
Demographics of those baby boomers.
We want to spend that money.
That's right. Little side comment there. Moving on to the employment picture, we certainly have had some good news on that unemployment rate. It's now down at the 5% level, much improved over where it was last year at 5.8%. I know we always bring up the U6 measure, which is an alternative measure of unemployment. That at last read was just under 10% at 9.9. Also showed some improvement over last year at 11.4. But the one point that remains concerning as we look at these numbers is this participation rate, which of course has dropped off significantly from where it was, and we're really back to the levels we were in the 70s. And certainly, is this a function of, yes, the 10,000 baby boomers a day who retire? Is it a function of folks just giving up looking for work? Is it a function of folks being increased people on disability? The answer to that would be yes. It's a combination of all of those factors.
But it is increasing, as
Yes.
our note here is, right? So
Yeah, it went up a little bit.
When you have full employment, what would be the participation rate?
The participation rate would probably be more upwards around that 65%, I would say, with full employment.
And an unemployment rate, full employment is considered about where it is now, right? In terms of that 5%.
Yeah,
that's what you hear.
4.5% to 5%.
Okay.
Yeah. So we certainly just on a headline numbers are looking at numbers that would lead a person to believe that everything is in good shape.
But, people don't feel that.
Well, and that's the disconnect, because the participation rate, right,
Right.
is not where it should be, so.
Right, and in addition to the fact that the new jobs that have been created have not necessarily been at the same level of the jobs that were lost.
Right.
We've had a lot of job creation in the hospitality area, in retail, and those are not the same wage-paying jobs as, say, the construction, housing-related jobs that were lost during the recession. So if we want to flip on to the next page, we're looking at, of course, Ohio here, and the Ohio picture a little bit better than the national average, and of course, Portage County, this would be as of October, was at 4.2%. So got some good things going on here in the county, apparently. On page 8, looking at the impact of changing interest rates over the past year here. And we can certainly see, if we look at the gold line, where interest rates were at the end of November in 2014 versus the blue line, where they are at November of 2015. We can see that the shorter-term interest rates have moved up a bit, and that's been a function of, number one, the market is already anticipating that the Fed is going to increase interest rates, and so that's already priced in to the market, we would say. But the longer-term picture of interest rates, there's been very little movement there. And in some cases, when we look further out, depending on the day, sometimes rates are lower than what they were before. And that's a result of, the U.S. is a safe haven for global investors, whether it's other foreign central banks or just other global investors. And with interest rates being so low in other safe haven countries, our rates are higher than others, so that draws in investors, and so that has served to push down our interest rates. Excuse me. So even if, when the Fed does embark on raising interest rates, they'll be battling the fact that it will continue to draw more money into the U.S. markets as well. And this, this shape of the yield curve supports our strategy, which is to continue to take advantage of the longer-term opportunities that are available there. When I say longer-term, I'm meaning in that 3, 4, and 5-year area, to take advantage of those higher interest rates, but yet have a portion of the sizable portion of the portfolio a little bit shorter, in that 2.5 to overnight type area, so that we're able to take advantage of the market as the Fed embarks on this slow rising interest rate environment. The other point, too, to make on this is that with the shape of the yield curve as it is, it still supports investing a sizable portion of the county's portfolio in callable securities, because, as we can see, as we've experienced, we buy the callable bond. But then, with age, as it ages, it gets a little shorter in maturity, then it gets called. Then we're able to turn around and reinvest those monies at pretty much the same interest rate that the security was called. And then additionally, we're able to make up that difference of rate between if we bought a non-callable versus a callable. So with this continuing shape of the yield curve in this environment that we're in, that strategy continues to make sense. So if we want to move on to page 11, kind of bring it down to really what does this mean for Portage County. we provide the comparison of where the portfolio was a year ago to where it was here at the end of November. And we can see that we have a little more dollars invested, $6.5 million more than what we had last year. I pulled the August report as well to just kind of put it in perspective. At the end of August, we had invested $86.1 million. We had a little bit of cash on hand, so we have to put the bulk of that to work. Portfolio statistics. Now the portfolio has a weighted average maturity under 3 years at about 2 3/4 years. Portfolio's yield is 1.36%. So that's going to generate just under $1.2 million of interest income on an annualized basis.
And I just note that on the dollar amount as of today, we're just over 90
Right.
in the amount invested. So
Yes.
just to give you that most up-to-date figure.
Right, yeah, we still had a couple million that we were working on from month end. So it's continuing on. It's been a busy 3 months, needless to say. Our recent purchases, we did have monies that matured during the quarter as well, in addition to the called bonds. So this resulted in a significant amount of investment activity. Again, in line with what our expectations would be by utilizing the callable strategy as well.
Yeah, and I just note for the record that there are 3 of these, 2 on the bottom of page 1 and 1 on the top of the second page of the recent purchases that are missing their maturity dates, so we'll be adding those before we post that online. But they are, in case you're curious, in order November 6th of 2017, November 14th of 2017, and November 20th of 2017, just to sort of tell you what the duration is on those. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are relatively short ones.
And then on page 14, we've kind of done a side-by-side comparison, from the point when Meter had acquired Productive Capital to where we were then a year ago, and then to where we are here today. So we can certainly see the impact of 2 factors here. Number one, a different investment strategy, a much more comprehensive investment strategy, has resulted in, of course, we have a little bit longer weighted average maturity, which has translated into a higher weighted average yield. And then in addition, being able to incorporate in the direct purchases of the FDIC-insured CDs, as opposed to just relying upon the CDARS program for that exposure. So over this 2-year period, on an annualized basis, the county will have seen their interest income increase by a little over $700,000 per year.
Yeah, I think that's an important page, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, it's a nice trajectory, certainly. And then, of course, last couple pages are the actual portfolio report of the individual holdings. So, are there any other questions?
Okay, good. We'll see none.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
I think we vote on this, right, to accept it? Do we not? Can I have a motion to accept then?
So, second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Formalizing posting policy. So, we've received several inquiries of late for our records, and as a part of that conversation, we have been asked about what our policy is for posting notice of these meetings. Traditionally, we have simply kind of done that through the regular commissioners posting notice process, right? So when your agenda is posted, that's considered this element. I just wanted to have a conversation on the record about that and make sure that that was a conscientious choice that we had made. In my mind, I think it's fine to continue doing that. I do believe that we're going to have to at our organizational meeting, which I think is in January. Looking at you like you should know that. But yeah, I think it's in January. Whatever that is, we're going to have to vote on that formally, I think, to make sure that that's what we decide to do. But in advance of that meeting, I wanted us to have an opportunity to talk about it. So, that's, I guess, my inclination is to continue doing that. I think, we probably would want to ask council, but my understanding is that covers the basis as respects, the open meetings rules. So long as you're saying, here's how we're going to notice the public. I think it's pretty broad, generally, what you're able to do. So,
For the legal ads,
Yeah, I guess my point is you don't have to do like an ad in the newspaper necessarily, so long as you as long as you at an organizational meeting formally say, here's how we're going to do it. You can do it however you choose. Now there are special rules for different meetings. So if you have an emergency, you need to notify the press at least 24 hours before, if that's possible. There are those exceptions, but generally speaking, my understanding of that is that you can do it.
Define who the we are. You see, we are. We're going to do all this, right?
The we as the investment advisory committee. In terms of that. So we'll just be having a meeting to formalize that policy. Now, I've been talking to Amy about where we keep the records, the minutes and that kind of thing. I have no qualm with having those in my office. I think it's half a dozen one way and six the other, frankly. So we'll continue working that out. But, yeah. So, okay. Well, that's all I had, unless you all have something else you wanted to talk about. Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, so, one last thing, and this isn't on the agenda, but by way of keeping you all posted, the home improvement program, we have about 25% utilization at this point. Not surprisingly, we're seeing a slowdown in interest in that because it's winter. Though it has been warmer than normal, it's still winter, and I think people look at the window that they're going to have to get stuff done and say no thanks. So we'll be, again, just as a reminder, rolling out more on that in the spring, and we'll see where we are at that point. But that's that. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So moved. Oh, no, I'm not on that. Sorry.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Can you sign those minutes?
Oh, sure.
Those are the
Yeah.
meetings that are already set. I think they're Portage, but I don't know if they're going to be.
I'll do this out here and bring it back. How about that? Okay.
Do you guys have a copy of the job description?
I have it. The emergency management.
You just got a copy?
Emergency management.
Oh, this is what? The plan?
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry for the delay in sending this to you. It's just a little, with the holidays and everybody on vacation, it's just, yeah. So Ryan and I got together yesterday, and we're like, uh-oh. But, yeah. If you remember, back in October, Ryan and I came to you and presented a couple of the different positions that he has in EMA. The one was administrative assistant, moving Patty Corley up. And then he also presented the idea of the emergency management planner position. So we had left that meeting with the instructions to draft the job description. So this is what we're presenting to you now, the job description.
I have just one comment concerning them. It's on page 2 at the very top. It's the essential job functions, and it says perform any other duties as assigned by the Homeland Security Emergency Management Director or the Board of County Commissioners. And I'm thinking we should take off the Board of County Commissioners because if the board wants something done, we would direct Ryan, who then in turn would direct his people to do that.
I'll make that
So
change.
we are informed always of, and we certainly have a little lag time there, so that's something we'll address after the first of the year. But that's fine.
Okay. And then we have a request to post. I think Ryan would like to post this position as soon as possible.
Yeah, post as soon as possible. Maybe give it 2 weeks, 3 weeks because of the year. Possibly do interviews in the beginning of January. I think we anticipated a January 19th, but with 2-week notices and the holidays, it may be a little after that before the position's actually hired.
I'm thinking maybe it should be longer because it is the holiday.
Okay.
There's more interviews held during the holidays than any other time of the year. I mean, I
People are probably on vacation and they can go out.
Take a chance to.
I was surprised by that.
Where do we
Or
put?
as an alternative, you could say in the advertisement until filled, rather than the
Okay.
deadline.
Until filled. Yep, we could do that.
Okay, so we will add that journal entries.
Yes.
And Amy, I'll send it to you. Here's the
Oh, thank
signature.
you.
Do you want to talk about the scale?
Well, the debt 4 is actually listed on the job description, so they know the pay scale.
The game plan was to start at the minimum, and then once the probationary period is moved to where we had budgeted. We budgeted for 17, so we'll move it to an area after the probationary period's over. I'm hoping to find the right personality as well as the job experience.
Yeah, this is very specific, so you're not going to, just Joe Blow off the street's not going to do this.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about it? No? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Janet.
Well, I will do the posting today, and I'll send it to you for review.
Amy needs a copy.
I'll make sure she has it.
Okay. The rest of your agenda?
Yeah, but just Susan and I. And we really just wanted to talk about, I guess our move to the 7-4, I guess, was brought up last week.
Well, actually, it was brought up by Todd, which seemed
Yeah.
weird. But at the time, I was trying to retrace how it came up, and he did bring it up. But I understand there may be some concerns about that, so go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we won't call them concerns. We just have, just some different ideas. I know, at least from what I understand, originally this was Paul's idea to move HR up to 7-4. After talking to Susan, I guess for me, one of my major items I wanted to talk to you about was quite a few employees. We get a lot of traffic on our floor, just from employees and from applicants and the public in general. But for me, I do get calls from employees wanting to meet with me confidentially. They don't want either
They don't want to be on the
director or
commissioner's
whatever,
floor.
or find out that they're meeting with me.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, I've had 2 employees just in the past month ask to meet with me on their day off. So no one really sees them coming in to meet with me. I'm just afraid that if we move to this floor, they may not feel
I meet with
that.
people continuously too regarding their health care and their FMLA.
Sure.
I have a lot of people come that are very emotional sometimes when they speak with me, and I think they, from an employee standpoint, they like that confidentiality, the exclusiveness, I guess, for
Sure. I think we did it thinking we wanted to get you off that floor because
In a better place.
right, and it is lovely up here. I mean, it is,
I can really appreciate what you're saying, and I think maybe we needn't do that, but we do need to do something
With that
to
floor.
clean up that area, to brighten it up.
It's the lighting, and I don't mind to
Yeah.
paint my own office. I mean, I don't mind to. I don't have a problem doing that at all.
You know what, if we could get the walls painted some vibrant color.
Yeah, I told Jamie, the holes, she has holes in her walls. I have mine pretty much covered up, but I mean, I know how to patch those if I can just, borrow somebody to move my furniture out a little bit.
Oh, no, Susan, you have to move your furniture.
Well, I mean, if you give me a dolly, I could probably do that.
It's not just your offices, it's the whole.
It is, the whole
Well,
atmosphere.
at least we could, some fresh paint will help. And I'm sure.
Maybe we should get some
we have
curtains or
electrician.
something over that middle part. I'm not kidding you.
I think the middle part should be taken out because it's junk, just a bunch of junk in there.
Well, I remember when I came
Right.
for my
Inside.
interview, my first interview
You
was
probably
on
did.
that floor, and I can remember seeing that and thinking, oh, well, this floor must be under renovation. That's what I thought. I just try to remember
Well, you know what,
because
when
it's
you get off
normal.
the elevator, surely there is a way to address that lighting.
Right.
Yeah, and I
it
would
is.
say
Surely
that
there's
would be
got
our
to be
only
one.
need is
We need
lighting.
to issue an edict, let's clean that floor up.
Because I
How
remember.
many times have we attempted to
We've
do
already
this?
done that.
I
haven't
know,
we?
but then we need to go, we need to move
We
the
didn't
crews
enforce
in.
it.
Why don't we
Yeah.
just
Yes.
ask, I guess, Janet, move the crews in, and let's
Yes,
get
yes, we
going.
need to enforce it.
Because we're
But-
trying to make our reception area
Yeah.
cleaner and, just
Organized.
organized. So
We
we've
had-
been helping with Terry's help. We've been
And
working
I
on
think your
that.
selection of the fuchsia color
That'll brighten things
Really
up.
brighten
I mean,
everything up,
for sure.
yeah, exactly.
But you know, your comments are very well taken, and I
Absolutely.
understand them 110%.
And we have given it a lot of thought
We
because, you know,
have, because we sat down and talked about it,
And I'm
and
glad
just
you
really
did, because
caring about the
I didn't think
employees.
about that. We were just trying to get you out of that
Yes.
mess.
and we appreciate
And we,
that.
yeah, we definitely appreciate that. But yeah, if there was just some ideas that we could do to help improve our floor, either by painting, but the lighting, I would say, would be our number one.
I think
Yeah.
that wall, for the middle part, makes it very dingy and
Yes,
it does.
ugly, and I think it should come down, and that,
Open that up.
junk should be taken out of there, and maybe have some tables and chairs for training or something.
Absolutely, I think that's excellent.
We can
Get
always
rid of
use
that-
extra space
yeah,
with that.
That obstruction or whatever, and even just,
That would open up the light.
that would open up, right, but we do need new lighting. When you get off that elevator, I'm surprised we don't have workman's comp claims, and people just fall
Yeah,
in.
yeah, right.
Well
Surely we
taken.
can do
Thank you so
something
much for bringing
within
it to us.
you know, within our, I know we couldn't go forward with the toilet floor, but we can certainly do
We
something.
can improve it, though.
Yes, so just some small things would be a big improvement, I think.
Okay, what's the direction to Joanne then?
Yes,
Lighting?
Yes.
Paint?
lighting,
Well,
Lighting,
no, and we
paint.
would like to ask her to come back with a suggestion, and we can talk about it.
well, let's get her, when she's in here today, let's talk to her about it and get a plan together and help us in.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a number of times we've talked about it, we haven't been able to get it done. So
Yeah.
surely there's something before them we can do, and we'll ask her.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you
All right,
much.
all right, thank you. Yeah. All right, thank you.
That was,
Now,
I'll be back at 1:30 with Bill Steiner.
okay, okay. All right.
thanks, thanks for reminding us. Okay, why don't we get through the rest of the discussion items at least?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you know what, we were going to, we did the discussion on
Yeah, we've done that. The only thing we haven't done are the journal
the
entries.
journal entries.
Oh, all right, well then we can, or do we have anything?
Yeah, she's got it. Amy gave me a sticky this morning. I had it underneath my notebook. On the printed applications, which, by the way,
Oh.
the electronic application on the website has been updated, so the felony conviction question has been removed. The printed applications that we still have a large quantity of. And I know this might sound tacky, but do you want me to blacken out the conviction question, or just let it be and let people answer it?
Well,
Yes,
are we,
it is.
non-compliant if we leave it on there?
Right now, we're okay, because it's still on the governor's desk to be approved, and then we'll have 90 days once he signs it, we'll have 90 days to be compliant. So right now, the electronic version is compliant, it's just the hard copy. I am making sure that the departments aren't using that question as a barrier for not interviewing applicants. So I'm kind of trying to make sure of that. But right
So
now,
I
we
guess
do
the
have.
decision is, do we just want to shred or throw those away and
No.
get new?
Well,
Is that the question?
no.
Well, yeah, and
We don't want to throw them away. It's too expensive. But
and there's a large quantity.
I think until it becomes law, we just use the same ones.
Okay.
And then when it does become law, we'll have to cross that part out. It's just one little section.
Yeah, it's one little sentence. Yeah. And eventually, I would like to, have more people use the online application versus hard copy.
Okay.
So that'll eventually be a conversation that I'll have with you guys, but.
Yes, you just thought of that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Jan. I think my several wants to talk to you.
Oh, we do have some add to the agenda items,
Yes, we do.
and one of the
where
first
did I
ones,
see
we
it?
want to do that, I'm sure. Add to the agenda.
We also have this, Maureen, on the prosecutors. We should probably add that to our journal entry.
Oh, is it
Or-
the VOCA?
It's a journal entry that the Board of Commissioners signed a personnel action form acknowledging the retirement of Douglas Beats as an engineering. Oh, that was already done, sorry.
Oh, all right, okay.
Sorry,
That's fine.
forget that.
That's good.
You know
Did you
what, I
find
don't
your,
s-
please add?
I don't seem to, Amy, I know you gave that to me,
Yeah.
or Julie did.
The
No,
first
she
one is
sent
on
me
the
a
health
file.
benefits.
Thank you. I'll give it back to you. Okay, approve the Tuesday transfers, okay. Motion to,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
motion to approve the Tuesday, December 22nd, 2015 wire transfers for health benefits as presented by the county auditor and reviewed by the Department of Budget and Financial Management.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion on the health benefits? If not, roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Motion to accept the chocolate-covered pretzel cash donations from the Portage County employees to raise money for the Employee Enhancement Committee to the Portage County Department of Job and Family Services.
Second.
Any further discussion on the chocolate pretzels? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And the next is confidential.
Correspondence. Oh, you know what? I've read that, so I know I've had this. And he's saying it's unlikely that these wage they won't start before June 2016. And I think he's telling us it's impossible to do what we're wanting to do by the end of the year.
The impossibility meaning that.
The electrician, the building department.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Well,
I thought he was saying we can't retain someone.
Well,
okay.
If this is confidential, it
Yes,
should
so we
either
need
be
an
an
executive
exec.
session.
okay.
Yeah.
We need executive
Can
session.
we do number
Yes.
4?
Okay,
Right, and we
discussion
can
of
go
Portage
to
County
executive
Social Committee citizen appointments. Okay.
Oh, this is the committee.
Okay.
We're dealing with the committee appointments
Okay.
right now.
You already did 1 through 3?
We did one, and two,
Well,
we're going to
three
go
is going
back
to be
to.
exec session.
Oh, okay.
We're going to, right, we're going to do exec session.
So the 4 citizens.
I added, there's 6 who have applied.
Right.
Because you got the letter of interest from Alicia Wilson.
Did the lady?
Yeah, Alicia Wilson,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, well, let's do 2, 3, 4, and 6.
I agree.
I'm sorry.
2, 3, 4,
Oh,
and
yes, okay.
6.
So 4 is the,
The treasurer from the Tea Party.
yes,
And then 6 is the lady that,
yes,
yes.
is Alicia Wilson, right. So,
Well, okay, I agree. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
any further discussion? Just for clarification, the 4 citizens are Christopher Mosher, Ryan Croft, Carl Crawford, and Alicia Wilson?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Good.
So, should they be notified, or with a letter that says what? The board will host the first meeting, when do you want to have it? I mean,
Yes.
what are the parameters?
Well, I think, what do you both think? We should
Why don't you
inform them.
draft a letter and then we
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
So you wouldn't see it till next year?
no,
Is that
can
okay?
we see it on
I-
Thursday?
This is your last meeting, you're not going to be here.
We're not going to be here Thursday?
No.
This is your last meeting.
Why,
No.
when did it get canceled?
It's
No,
never-
it never did.
What was the calendar?
That was
I
announced
thought
months
that-
ago.
Oh, you're right, it was the 15th was the
It's
last.
today.
Yeah.
Hard to believe.
Today's the
I know.
last day.
So I can get something
Hard to
drafted.
believe it.
Well, I'll be in the office tomorrow. I've got the
Okay.
NEVCO in the morning, and then I'm coming in here.
But you're still waiting to hear from Denise about some of the issues that you talked about in exec session with Denise. Remember that? So I can draft something and we can work on it. And it won't go out to you all for
I
see
mean,
it. Okay.
I just think if we could at least inform them that we have formed the committee and they're on it, and that we will,
Contact them.
you know, we will contact them as soon as.
So you plan to
be
host the
determined.
first
Yeah.
meeting, correct?
Right, right, oh, yes.
Okay.
Just that, is that all right with both of you?
Yes.
We'll
All right.
Just let them know that
Okay.
we've named them to the
Just so they
committee.
know they're on the team.
Yeah, right,
Alrighty.
that's a good thing. All right, now, is there a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Second.
And this would be for personnel, I think.
Is it
How would that be?
CBA? Isn't it collective bargaining agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
personnel.
for labor negotiations.
Oh, all right, labor negotiations.
Motion to exit executive session.
Second.
Roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Is there action?
No. No, there isn't.
We want her to call Ron.
Yes, however, we'd like you to call Ron Zabowski. We did call. I left
Left
a
a
message.
message.
And asked him to come in this afternoon at about 2:30 on this matter that he's given us confidential correspondence on, if he could do that.
Okay.
And he said he could be here in a half an hour. All right. I think we did everything that on the add to the agenda. Would you like to do journal entries or wait till this afternoon?
I don't think we're gonna get any more journal.
Well, we have
entries.
solid waste, we'll have their journal entries.
Well, maybe we should wait till, I mean, I
Oh, Joanne, I'm sorry, Joanne's name.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
So this is for Denise, this state of Ohio. Can we just put it on next? I know you wanted to talk to her about it. Denise? The reference one,
Is that Ames?
it is.
You know, I remember Kathleen saying, I want to talk to her.
Oh,
That was,
it
yes.
is.
it's, yeah, we did,
It's okay.
We did.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then
Oh, we did?
we've got
Okay.
something to talk about with Todd later. too.
Right, that's the, from
One.
Dave Vaughn.
Yes, the
Yes.
RLF, right,
Yeah.
to compare the figures.
Right.
Yeah, I mentioned that to him when he was in here. I knew when they were this big, they were the babies then.
I am disappointed that she did
Happens.
give us something in there. We got goodies.
You bet. I think you have candy in there.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Now we have to pass them around.
You always have to take a break for candy. Oh.
Nope. Today was
You
the
know, I went
7
mine in
mile
the back, so
day.
it means I could have some of yours.
Are we on? Are we on?
Sure, I can have some, right?
No,
We're on.
Did we recess then and convene already?
No, we haven't done anything.
Oh, okay, so we're recessing as county commissioners and convening as solid waste commissioners. Bill?
All right. Whoever wants to.
Motion to approve the draft meeting minutes from December 10th, 2015.
Second the motion. Any discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Move to adopt the 2016 appropriations budget for the solid waste district.
Do we have any comment?
This currently does match the EPA's plan as submitted.
Okay.
Do we need any brief explanation? There's
If you
a
have
second.
questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That was a good answer.
That's the best way to handle
And
it.
Kathleen, you seconded?
It is the
All
plan,
right.
and the plan was thoroughly discussed.
All right,
That's
sure.
what it was made.
Any further discussion? Any comments, Bill, that you'd like to make?
No, we just, as always, Todd and I are on the same page. We keep the numbers close to the vest. We don't do anything really extravagant with the budget because, as always, every year I get surprised with something, and I always go back to that $50,000 scale that I had to buy on short notice. So we always try to plan for the what-ifs.
You bet. Okay, roll call, Amy.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Motion to authorize a cost of living pay adjustment for full-time and part-time non-bargaining employees for the solid waste management district.
Is this the 1.5?
Second.
Oh, I thought it was 15. Now, let me get, oh, I'm just
Oh, wait a minute
Oh,
here.
silly you.
yeah, let me move that decimal point over yet again.
That was a
Yeah.
nice
I, hey,
Easy mistake.
yeah, I figured I'd catch you from that lunch lull and just, yeah, it mirrors the 1.5 that the Portage County Commissioners did for their departments.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yes, I did.
Any further discussion on that 15%?
Thank you.
If not, the 1.5, I better clarify this. Roll call, please, Amy.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Okay, discussion items. I put in front of the board a copy of some price increasing that we would like to do on the containers. Yeah, here, I'll give you one. Yeah.
Thank you.
The prices have remained the same before I got here, and currently for a 95-gallon toter, it's $6. A 2 cubic yard is $15. 21 for a 4, 25 for a 6, and 27 for an 8. So if you factor out the 8 years, it's really a modest cost. This is just for discussion. I'm not asking for any resolution. And just so the board knows, we do about 200 to 250 of these a year. Back in '09, the board at that time passed a resolution authorizing me just to sign this contract only, because if not, either Kelsey or Don now would be bringing over a stack, and I'm afraid carpal tunnel claims would. So if you're comfortable with that, we'll just continue status quo. But when I come back in next month, I would like to implement these changes just to kind of bring up a little revenue in that program.
And how long has it been since?
Those prices were fixed long before I was here, and I've been here 8 years, Vicki.
Okay, so it's more than 8 years.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Bill? Okay.
The newsletter, I'll let Kelsey explain the newsletter. The newsletter is part of the EPA plan that is mandated that we do one. So Kelsey has been working feverishly on a draft, and since it's her thunder, I'll let her explain it.
So basically, we just want to make sure, now that we're implementing all these new things and we're kind of getting with the times, we want to obviously broadcast ourselves and just tell people why they want to choose Portage County and stick with the county. So this was just a draft of things that are going on right now. So obviously we're going single stream. We're getting the new truck, so we obviously wanted to put that out there. This is actually up on our website right now already. But then we also wanted to say, like, okay, upcoming events that either we're doing or that are going on within the county, or if we have holiday closings, like obviously in December and January we're going to. And then we obviously wanted to highlight that our new website is live. So that's why we put that on the top for that one and what they can find. And then if there's something going on, so right now we have the holiday recycling going on. So we obviously want that highlighted because people are going to wonder what they can recycle out of their holiday celebrations and whatnot, and then what we don't accept, but where they can take them. So that's one thing that the website's really helped with, is that if we don't accept it, we guide them right to the website because we have places where they do accept it. So that I know has really helped a lot. And then as I was talking with Kathleen a little bit ago, we also, if you see on the front, I put featured persons. I haven't done that yet. I wanted to see how you felt about it. But we thought about doing, whether it's someone within the community that's done something really well with recycling, or whether it's one of our own. We thought it'd be really cool to give kind of an inside look as to what we're doing, what the community is doing to keep everybody involved. That's kind of where we're at with it now. That's, like I said, that's a complete draft. If you have any suggestions, I would absolutely love them. But so that's where we're at.
I think this looks good.
Yeah, and again, this is something that the EPA wanted us to do, and I think Kelsey has done a phenomenal job on this. Again, the goal is to drive everybody to the website. We will print some hard copies, put them at the Kent and Ravenna libraries for people, but it's still a great way for us to get information out without having to bother Mike with a lot of press releases or anything like that. Not that he doesn't look forward to my phone calls and emails, or Don, but still, we still find the Record Courier very good. But this is just something that, the other thing that Kelsey's working on too, that is part of the plan that the EPA asked us to do, is composting. Now, we don't want to take 40 acres somewhere and start a composting facility, because been there, done that. But this is for backyard composting for people that want to take food scraps and things like that, turn it into soil. And so Kelsey is looking into that right now. So I guess short version, long story, is a lot of the projects that the EPA has put on for the education specialists that are a year out, she's well up on the learning curve and probably going to knock all of them out early. No pressure on you. But yeah, surprise. But yeah, it's very comforting to know that we're gonna. It looks like we're on target to meet or beat any of the deadlines the EPA put us in the plan for any of the new projects or programs.
I really like this recycling during the holidays, except what do I do with the bows then on my many gifts?
Put them back on the gifts you're going to give to me.
Yeah.
I mean, what about the bows that you know, the ribbon bows? You take, yeah.
We don't take
I
those.
just got there.
No, we don't accept those.
Oh, not even ribbon bows?
Yeah. I think if I had to just
Yeah,
do
that's
a
nice.
stretch, would be, and this is something that I didn't think of when Kelsey asked me, but there's a lot of social organizations that collect toys. You know, maybe the Toys for Tots program that might help offset if people bring them in and they're not destroyed or something like that. That would be my recommendation, is to repurpose them for those that are less fortunate than.
She said bows, I think, not toys.
No, bows, because
Bows.
sometimes you'll want to wrap them.
Oh, I see.
And maybe do that.
I must,
Well,
I guess that's
please, no more than $1,000 this year.
I'm astounded that the average person generates over 4 pounds of
You know
trash
what, I saw that.
every day, and about one, and
Yeah.
about 1.5
Yeah.
and about 1.5 tons of solid waste per year.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem,
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I know, it's scary. But that's one of the reasons why I've become truly interested in the composting too. Because if we do the composting, 80% will be taken away from the landfill. So it's truly impressive. So I'm really trying to learn and do that. I'm hoping to go to a couple of seminars and everything like that as well.
do we have room out there?
No, that would
Oh, come on.
that would require a little bit of tweaking of the transfer station permit and our plan update. So
If we could get people to do it in their own
That's,
yard.
Right.
that's my goal.
Right, yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. The only other thing under discussion, and I'm sorry I did not put that on there, but your memo reminded me, the board sent out a memo for Alice training. I just want to let you know that the Solid Waste District is scheduled for January 8th, which is a Friday, at 1 p.m. for the entire staff.
Oh, wow.
So that has been done, or handled, scheduled, I should say.
That's good.
The only other thing I have is executive session personnel,
Okay. Or hire? or
staff,
fire?
staff,
Step.
staff reduction.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I almost stole Vicky's, no, it was yours. I almost stole Vicky's
Well,
pen.
that's nice, that's fine.
That's all I need.
Okay, motion, Jason?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Is there action?
No.
No.
No action. I don't think
Have some binders.
Taking everything?
No, with our shredding program, we get boxes of those
Oh,
things.
gosh, we do too.
Thank you.
All right.
Congratulations, Jan.
Yes, Jane.
I think.
We're proud of you.
Motion adjourned? No journal entries.
No.
No, I think we have.
Say motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, I'm sorry.
Is there a second? All in favor, please, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we will reconvene as Portage County Commissioners. And we have next, I would assume,
Internal
Terry and,
Oh, BOE. BOE.
Joanne.
oh, Joanne.
Is she coming in with,
Yeah, let me hear it.
and is Todd coming up for this too? I think he should.
Okay.
I was in your house this morning. Well, your office.
We're not listening to you, Maura.
I am so sorry.
Nice, thank you.
What can we do for you?
No, I said I was in your house, I said house, I meant office this morning.
It feels like a home sometimes.
Was you there so much?
Yes.
Or all night.
Right. Oh, yes, right. You've had some of those too, right? Okay, there's too much lull in the activity
Yeah.
here.
Can you start with Todd, or, I don't know.
We
Pardon
just
me.
came as observers. It was
It's
our
really,
yeah,
it's
that
really
was
internal
Joanne.
services.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Whoops, let me just set this so that I don't spill it to iced tea.
I'm okay. It's
Okay,
a crazy
Joanne.
time of year, so yeah. All right. I have resolutions first.
Okay, motion to enter into a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Youth Services Sub-Grant Agreement with the Northeast Ohio Consortium Council of Governments for JFS.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to declare the necessity to purchase equipment for use by the Portage County Engineers Office.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to declare obsolete and dispose of Portage County personal property title to the Portage County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
Second.
Any discussion on these items? If not, all in favor,
And
please
then
indicate by
here's,
saying
Aye.
and here's the walk-in. We were able to get all the stars lined up, and everything was
Okay.
good with the Board of Elections.
Motion to award the bid and enter into contract negotiations for the lease purchase of election precinct, do we want a drum roll here? Based optical equipment, marking devices that are ADA compliant, central tabulators, and ancillary items between Portage County Board of Commissioners and election systems and software.
I second the motion.
Wow.
For discussion, any comments that you might make?
I would just say for the commissioners to please remember that the cost associated with the voting systems purchase is strictly for the system itself. That does not include the incurred expenses that we will have for ballot printing, the extra paper cost. We will need to purchase some voting marking areas where, much like our old punch card booths, we'll need to have some booths for marking ballots and some other miscellaneous items such as that. So
Right.
please do keep that in
I
mind.
think we understood that, at least I did.
By booths, you mean voting stations at the voting places?
Right, because they are marking a paper ballot, they still are required to have a privacy area to do that in, and what they are is pretty much a shell of a booth with a little table that they can go in, there's sides and a back to it, so nobody can see what they're doing while they mark their
How
ballot.
many, how many of those?
We are working on that number currently. We still actually have some booths from our punch card days
Oh my
that we
gosh,
can
really?
still retrofit to work. We're going out, we store a lot of that at the old nursing home. So we're going to go out, see what is still usable, and then work up the number for how many additionals we'll need to purchase.
Do they still have the little, weren't they red, white, and blue?
We actually have a couple of
Do you?
those. Those are not
You
usable,
really
but we
should
do
display
still have a
those.
couple.
Those are antiques.
It's like a curtain.
Yes, the curtains.
Yeah, little curtains, yeah.
Yeah, with the bar frames.
Another question. This simply allows you to negotiate.
Correct.
But since we're so rushed, do you not need to have?
That's Joanne's.
Denise has already reviewed the contract, and there's 3 minor changes that she'd like to see. And as soon as it's awarded, then we're going to contact them and see that we can get those changed. Yeah. So we're moving quickly as we can
But
along those
we won't
lines.
be back for voting until the 5th.
This is
all
our
we
last
gotta do.
But this is to allow the negotiations to happen,
But
so
the
that we can
actual-
get everything set up.
The actual purchase will not occur until January.
No, I believe that we can make the arrangements for everything to get in motion before that,
Okay.
based on this.
Okay.
Do we need a vote?
Yes, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, would you like to do this by roll call?
Sure.
It's so significant?
Sure.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Done, all right.
Okay. The next on my list is under discussion, the evacuation, lockdown, and building closure policy. You had received an AG opinion about the courthouse and had asked that somehow language be put in our policy about notifying the judges of building closes by 2 p.m.
Right.
And that's my suggestion below, is that at the first item under procedure in simple building closure, that we add that sentence at the end.
I would like to say add on to that if possible.
Okay, yes. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. I'll make that change and then send that, we'll post that the change in public folders.
That actually emanated, I think initially through Judge Enlow because of a closing that we
Last year.
started. He said, please let us know so that we can let the jury members know so that they don't come in.
Got ya.
You know,
And we'll get that in. Besides just updating it, I will send it out to all the elected officials and managers so they have a
Great.
copy.
It says under procedures in the agenda here, it says occasionally building may need to be closed for weather-related reasons or other non-emergency. Could we take out the word other because weather-related reasons may be an emergency?
Sure, that's
So
fine.
then if you just say weather-related reasons or non-emergency.
Okay.
Or
She wants to take the word other out.
Other out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Other non-emergency?
No,
Just other, just the word other.
Reasons or
Or a
non-emergency.
non-emergency, I see, sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
Okay.
very good.
All right, did we vote?
And then on number 1 here, what is
Do that
pick?
as a JE?
Person in charge.
Can we just write that out?
There's a glossary in the front of the booklet that tells us all the little,
Acronyms.
acronyms, yeah, because there's so many.
You'll be pleased to know that I thought about that, and I thought about it, and finally occurred to me
Person in charge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to spell it out.
And
because-
we can.
Yeah. Number 2, appointing authorities, department directors, or other supervisory personnel shall relay. The word shall or some
Okay.
similar word is missing.
Should?
Well, just, doesn't matter, just, there's no word there at all. We need a word.
Oh.
And then number 3, employees should leave the facility in the normal manner. And I don't think we should tell them they have to go home, but instead maybe say, and leave the county property, and leave county property. They may want to go to the grocery or something.
Okay,
Sorry, it's been one of those days.
I understand. All right,
All right, we will add this to journal entries, or we will add this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, this will be added to journal entries. Amy.
okay.
Okay.
We're down to the blue pending sheet list. And we do have some updates for you today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the first update comes at the concrete for Kent Muni. We did have a meeting with the Judge Poland, Nicole from the court, the prosecutor's office, and we came up with a list of things that we still are not clear on whether they've been finished or not. So I composed all that and sent it out to the construction manager and architect and said, okay, you guys need to go back and confirm that this stuff has been done or not done, because we want to give Cleveland Cement, one last list saying, you haven't done this, you've done this, so that we can finish up, move on. Judge Poland would like to have the concrete sealed to help the protection, so we're moving towards that end. As far as the Hills Pond Dam goes, we're in the process of scheduling a meeting for the discussion on their draft report as soon as we can. They want to do it within the next week or so, so that we'll finally have something to bring to you in a closest of a final format that we will probably after the first of the year. And then the coroner's building, I'm happy to say that all the renovations will be completed by Monday.
Oh, that's wonderful. Very happy. Does that include carpet and everything?
They're finishing the flooring, the tile things, and the carpeting. That's the last piece being done, and that'll be done on Monday.
Great, thank you.
Now that you mention the coroner's renovation and
Yes.
carpet.
Oh, the 6th floor.
Yes.
Yes.
We, in talking with
Todd.
Janet and
Oh,
Susan this morning,
okay.
we would like you to proceed with getting some improvements made on that floor.
Okay. I have that original list
All right.
that they came up with,
All right.
and which was, I think one of the first things that we could do that would help a lot is to put some light, because
That's
it's
what we were
it's kind
talking
of
about.
dark when you get off the elevators and so
Yeah,
forth.
It is dingy and dark. But
And the other thing was, maintenance can take out all those old treasure counters
And that's
and
what
those
Kathleen
and those
Kathleen suggested.
what do you call it, the
The barriers.
The barriers, yeah. They can do that, and I think that as well will open up
And then we have to take out all the old
the
machines.
junk, yeah.
Yeah, just-
Get all that taken out of
just
there.
get
Yeah,
it
and I
out of
think
there.
that'll open up things for, and make it a little bit
And
brighter.
then Ken, you haven't painted in some well, not fuchsia, but I mean some.
A brighter color, sure.
Some.
Yeah, that was on the list too. I'm sure that they wanted to see it
Oh,
painted.
absolutely.
Because I think it could be a gray, which kind of gives another darker feeling or something too. A bright beige or something. Yeah, we'll work on that. Yeah, now that they have that done over there, they can concentrate on this.
Good, because
Yeah.
we told them we would make that a priority.
Okay, very good.
Start right
Yeah.
away.
We can
Okay,
get that
Laura?
going.
Yeah.
Super.
And then I have
You want to do that as a journal entry?
Yes,
okay,
journal entry of.
the sixth floor move
Sixth-
forward, whatever
yes,
you want to
sixth
say.
forward. Sixth floor.
So just so you know,
Pretty-
move forward means just
prettiness.
cosmetic things and
Right.
taking down.
Oh, yeah, we're not
the
the,
big
oh, no,
project.
we don't,
Sixth floor
yeah.
cosmetic improvements.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then I have a need for exec session
Does
for,
that have anything to do with Board of Elections? That's what you're doing, this executive session?
no.
Okay. We want to bring up that, does that need to be an executive session? I don't think so.
They're probably not here for your executive session. are they?
Oh, they came, they wanted to make sure that the resolution went through and everything.
Right. But we have a budget issue.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
It's
sure.
a budget amendment. We have two, I guess, I don't know what you call them, budget amendment requests. They're number 74 and number 75. And it's to move funds from other lines into our payroll lines. And right as of now, that's still pending. Most of that money is, unfortunately, we're getting another round of petitions from the Secretary of State that'll be arriving next Monday. So that means part-time people and overtime people. So we need to have that money moved into our regular payroll line or overtime line.
Have you talked to Todd about it?
I have.
And-
You already approved it this month.
Pardon?
You approved it this month.
Oh, we already approved
all right.
it?
Okay, I just did, we looked before we came to see if it was in the system, and it's
No,
not.
you're good to go.
All right.
But you'll facilitate getting it moved for them.
It's just waiting to be posted.
Okay,
Oh,
all right.
All right, good. Oh, thank you. All right.
Sure. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, did we do roll call for exec?
What's the issue?
Personnel compensation.
Move to go into executive session for personnel compensation.
Second.
Roll call.
You can do if you want to.
No. I got called up. Was that just for the Board of Elections?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
It's less than job worth, I think.
Who are we
What
talking
Deb
about
made.
now, you or somebody else?
Me. You were talking about raising me to what Deb was making, right? No, she's not a job worth either.
Are we on?
Okay.
Can we turn off?
No. Oh, yes, maybe.
We're on.
Yeah. There's a difference.
Type something up and bring it out.
Yes,
Sure.
just we'll make it.
Okay.
comparable.
So we make it
Yes.
right.
Okay. We'll cite this adjustment.
I'll make a motion to come out of executive session.
I second the motion.
Roll call, please, Amy.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Is there action?
There will be.
Yes, well, we did authorize.
She's gonna bring that
yes,
check in,
an
yeah.
adjustment for
The
Internal
maintenance
Services
department.
Director. And we'll get the specifics for you.
Yeah.
For the director, you said?
I'm sorry?
And
For
the
the
maintenance department.
And maintenance?
Yeah. Oh, and yes, the maintenance department also. Yes, we have a printout here.
And, do we need to, on the rehire, retire, you don't want to name those folks, but
No,
We need to do anything
we
with that?
authorized,
You don't have to do that.
yes, we authorized a job worth for one of the retired retirees, and for the other retired retiree, we took that to 30 hours. And
That's
we
good.
can, Joanne can give you all the specifics here. Yeah, I'm going to
Now,
change
do
that
you
to
want to make a
15.
motion to go in executive session?
Sure.
Yes, I'll make a motion to go in executive session regarding labor
Labor, yeah.
negotiations.
Is there a second? Second, Peter second, okay. Roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Come out.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm surprised they don't have the name on here.
I am too, they have a
Motion to
logo.
come out of executive session?
Second. Roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Action?
There is action. We've authorized legal counsel to negotiate union contract. In the building department.
We're ready for you.
Oh, I think.
The thing is, are you ready for us, Todd?
I'm on that. Okay.
That 2012 thing you asked about,
And it's, okay.
it's outside of employment,
Right.
higher.
Right.
Yeah. You call that.
Yeah.
Joanne asked that I give this to you. You had asked her to
Okay.
bring that back.
Oh, thank you.
You got it.
Just-
There you go. The paper wasn't cooperating.
Okay. Okay, so this is,
Where are we, Todd?
this is where we're going to go, Joanne, right?
Yeah, right.
All right. On your original agenda, there was an R3 and an R4.
Yeah, I've got them here.
I can't see straight.
Do you need one? Do you need them?
No, somewhere I had the cover
Do we have an agenda for this?
sheet for the
Yeah.
resolution
It was R3 and R4.
on your
Oh,
on your
yes.
main agenda.
To the same,
R3 is the general fund. R4 is the non-general fund. This is the non-general funds. It is relatively unchanged since the tax budget that you've had in your possession. I don't know if the board had
So we
questions
really
regarding
haven't-
it.
We really haven't done anything to this, you're saying?
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just-
Basically, it's the same as what we've been looking at, yeah.
So that's R4.
That would, yeah, that's R4. To R3, my computer was not working. I have all the changes to date that the board had requested, so the board's aware of what the resolution would be. It just wouldn't, when I went to run the resolution that ties it all together, it just sat and ran and ran and ran and then crashed. So if the board doesn't have any other changes, then you could pass it
I've lost mine.
with those changes in effect.
As soon as you have it available, you email it.
Tomorrow morning, absolutely, absolutely. But it's basically, this packet that we've gone through
Right.
with the verbal changes that we've summarized at the end of each session.
You can always amend it.
Yes, yes.
Okay, did you want to go do the resolution?
I still
Three,
haven't done
here,
it.
3 and 4. Here they
so now this incorporates everything that we
Okay, I just found mine.
went over, right?
We summarized at the end of each meeting, it does incorporate all those changes. The only issue, Vic sent the email regarding that other 31.
Okay, I had 3 notes, Todd. I had RPC, 55,000, did we do that?
That is in there,
Did we do
correct.
that? Okay, Jim Greener, did we do him for 30 hours?
We
just
did,
that, yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, we just, in executive session, we just increased it 30 hours.
Yeah.
It probably will be out of the stormwater.
that we'll have to do an amendment to the non-general next
No, you can do it
next year to up that. My understanding is the increase is out of stormwater, is that correct?
Well,
Well, we think it's
Maybe.
maybe out of
yes, that's
water
the highest
restrictions.
potential.
Okay.
We need to have a conversation with Jeff
Okay.
to see if there's any of it.
And the other thing hanging was Vic's request for 31,360 because of that email that he shot to us. And
Yeah. Oh, and I do have one other item. Vic sent me an email.
Who, Vic?
Vic Miguelucci, prosecutor. He is returning some FOJ money. He didn't use it all, but he would like to give bonuses to some of his employees using those funds. To do that, he would need a budget amendment increasing his labor lines. If the board is willing, I would modify the budget amendment we passed this morning to include that. He would like his salary lines increased by $12,000, and that is what he's returning from the FOJ.
We're going to do the 31.3, which,
Well, that was for this year. The 31.3 is in 16.
Okay.
So we passed a budget amendment earlier this morning for the 2015 budget. If
For
the
the
board,
12,000.
if the board would like, we can add 12,000 to that so that he can do those bonuses for this year. The 31 in the email he's requesting for the 16 budget, which would
Yeah.
be a change
but he-
to
yeah,
R3.
so he didn't exceed what he had available.
No,
So
for
I think we
2015, he would stay within it.
have- Yeah, unfortunately, I think we have to do that.
Okay, so I will modify
Okay.
that to increase the prosecutor's budget lines in the 3 category by 12,000, and then I will pull that from the commissioner's other. There's money there with the understanding that Vic is returning that
Right.
at the end of the year.
And then the 216, are we going to do the 31,360?
That is the current question then before the
What is
board.
that, Vicki? I'm sorry.
For 2016, the 31,360 for the prosecutor
Yeah.
for the 1.5%.
Right, yeah, I would think we should do that.
What was the number again?
31,360. And I think there's benefits also in there, but I'm not sure. The email.
I'll double check that. I
Well,
thought
maybe
it
we could cap it at that, and he'll have to work that out.
make do.
Is that it?
I only had one other thought.
Okay.
We added the 3 positions to
Oh, shoot.
probation, adult probation.
Right.
Most of that workload, as the judge described when she came in, was due to the increased caseload for drug abuse, et cetera. There is an option that the board could fund those out of the new sales tax, and that would alleviate some of the pressure and let you put some of the money back to the capital. If you would want to do 1, 2, or all 3 out of the new money, we could certainly appropriate it that way. And I think it is appropriate use of the funds. As the judge indicated, they're calling probation over to test people right then, in the jail and whatnot.
Yeah, just so we don't get into a habit of
Okay.
every time an elected official.
I said it would go quick if we're not careful.
I won't support that.
Yeah. Not for this one either.
You
or-
don't want to do it with these 3.
We've already committed to the 3.
We did the 3. What I'm saying, though, is rather than funding out of the,
He's just saying use
But
it.
I like the idea of using it out of the new funds,
Out of the new.
because that's the very reason that we have this sales tax.
and that's what they say is it's because of the drug
All the positions, or
problem.
did you say just?
Well, that would be up to you. We've added 3. You could do 1, you could do 2, or you could do 3 out of the
How
new
much is
sales
the
tax
3
money.
altogether?
That would be around 150,000.
Could we just do 1 or 2 of them? I just don't want to start from the inception here, having the elected officials feel that this is their money, that they're going to give raises and they're
Maybe
going
the
to create positions.
55,000 that we just approved for another, was it 55,000?
You know, I'm thinking, looking at that jail, that's going to consume a good portion of that $5,000, period. Whether we put a
$5
$5
million.
million.
Absolutely, absolutely,
It's
yes.
going to take an awful lot of money, Kathleen. That building is in deplorable
You said
condition.
5,000 is 5 million.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, 5 million.
Yeah.
So I think 150,000 out of 5 million seems reasonable.
You're right, it is reasonable. I just don't want to get in the habit of every time.
You don't have to do it again?
Yeah, all
Just
right.
once?
Well, you know what, then I'm not going to do it again, because they're going to be looking for that as a,
Okay.
I won't say a slush fund, but every
Okay.
time they want to get somebody a raise or want another position, I'm not going to vote for it.
Okay.
So I'm
Is
hearing,
that perfectly clear?
Yeah.
I'm hearing add 31 to VIX.
31,360.
Is that?
Yes.
And then I'm hearing take the 3 for probation out of the 0002, which is the new sales tax money.
Put it into the capital.
With those 2 changes made, then is there anything else?
We did not mention to Joanne today, because we had decided to do this, that the sheriff could go ahead with those his positions, and not that we'd have to mention that to Joanne, but it's the cars, I'm thinking. He gets 5 cars, and those, were we to ask Joanne to order those?
Did she bring the resolution today? Resolution necessity?
No.
I'll double check with her.
Yeah, we'd like to get that.
Yeah, but that should be for next year's budget.
Right, those are, and we ordered 2, there's still 2 coming that we ordered in October.
Oh, that's going to be 7.
Yeah, so there's 2 coming.
That's wonderful.
We ordered 3 at the beginning of the year, we ordered 2 at the end of this year, they haven't arrived yet, and then the 5 new ones for next
Did
year.
I say, I think I did. That was really brilliant of you to originally suggest that. I'm serious. I mean, I know that you.
Todd doesn't like to pay interest.
No, I remember, and we had a lot of back and forth with the sheriff because it was so easy to lease the vehicles.
And they're going to be happy.
Yeah, no,
this
and
year,
he stood his ground, and just in the sense of it made perfect dollars and cents, and now we're going to be replacing 5 of them this year. That's quite an accomplishment.
Well, I told somebody this morning, I said, Todd thinks we're a bit generous in some places, but I said, that's his job.
Well, we are. We're trying to take care of people's needs, particularly, I think, along the lines of personnel that unfortunately we haven't been able to do in a very long time.
There's a long list, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion for the general fund fiscal year 2016 annual appropriation measure. What else am I supposed to say on this?
That's it.
That's it, okay.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion?
I think we've discussed enough.
Roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
And I will have copies of those to you as soon as possible.
Motion for the non-general funds fiscal year 2016 annual appropriation measure.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Vicki?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You put up with a lot from us, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We are going to be hosting a retirement.
Journal entries.
Yeah,
Oh,
retirement.
wait a minute. We want to talk to Todd about this.
Oh, yes. We're going to
NDS.
be hosting a retirement ceremony for the 3 K-9 officers that are.
Oh, okay.
That would be Cooper, Bronco.
Are they all 3 going?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
the
I knew
dog.
there were a
Yeah,
couple,
Roberto,
yeah.
Bronco, and who's the other one?
It's going to be, I don't know. Who's the other dog?
Cooper, Bronco, and Charlie.
Charlie.
Charlie, okay. Did you see this, Todd? I think that was from Dave Vaughn.
That's showing over $1 million, and we thought we had
350.
Well, your current cash is 350. This million is what will be paid to you when the outstanding loans come due eventually.
If they pay, if they're paid.
If they get paid, we do have a
If they get
default.
paid, that's the big if.
So,
Why does he say that we have that much money then if we don't
Yeah,
really have
that
it?
shouldn't be on there like that.
That's not right.
We don't have that.
yeah, this does say current cash balance.
Could you check
Evidently,
with
they
him?
don't. They're not
Yeah,
keeping
I will
the same
take
books
this.
we are. Well,
And Todd, when you look that over, he's saying they have is it a
3.45 default.
Well,
rate.
this is all, I think he added all the revolvers together, which may be close.
How many do we have, revolvers?
We have 5. You have 100,000 still in your section 17, but actually all that's committed
Yeah.
to the dam consultants.
Well, you know, I
The damn
remember unfortunately, the rusty nail.
Right, that was a big
And
default.
that was
yeah.
huge, so how?
Yeah. So this may be the total, but some of that is housing money.
Could you get a breakdown for
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you guys get that report. I'll
Yeah.
get it broken down for you.
I'd like to see it on
Yeah.
the businesses that we've loaned to.
But that 3.45, does that look like a reasonable default rate to you? Because that's what kind of struck me, because that's
Yeah.
better than, that's a good rate.
Well, this is within the last 3 years compared to what's outstanding. Yes, that would probably be correct.
Well, is that just skimming it then? The last 3 years, what?
Yeah,
That's not significant, but I'm thinking, since I've been here, we've written an
Oh, it
awful
has-
lot.
yeah.
We should say the last
Well,
10
he's,
years.
he's saying that the only reason we have those revolving loan funds though is because of NDS.
Well, that's, well,
No, that's not true.
it's your chip
The
grants
reason
that
that
turn
we
into
have them is
revolver.
because the federal government
Yeah.
had HUD money.
Yeah.
They gave all communities, especially those communities that were low income, if I recall. And they gave us the money with the idea that, and he's taking credit for lobbying to make the laws say that the money that, when we collect it back, it comes to us and
So they
we
have
keep it.
lobbyists?
So, well, no, he was lobbying
Oh.
whoever was I imagine it was the federal government passing the bills saying that originally we're going to have and it was a state lobby. Originally it was going to go back to the state,
what's the
and he
amount?
lobbied so that it would come back to the
The
local
general fund
government.
budget.
But there were a lot of other people.
The total is 41,000.
41 million.
Yes, 41 million. I can email it exactly to you. It should
With
be-
everything in there now, right?
It should be right here. Yes, that would include everything.
What else, 41 million? What are we talking about?
Yes.
I was just asking you the total on general fund budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't bring my summary sheet.
Last year it was
Oh,
40 million something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
You
41.
email it to
I'll
us.
email it right to you, yeah.
And the overall, the non-general,
118 million, some
and
change.
last year was it 120? No.
I wanted to say 116.
Well,
I
this
can
looks
email
like,
that
this
as
is
well.
116 here, nothing on the,
Then it's, maybe last year was 118 and this year's 116. Does that say 116? That's the total.
And we're
altogether.
okay with carryover?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's not
Well done.
excessive, but it is
Yeah.
comfortable that we don't need to worry.
Yeah.
Even though we blew 400.
That's right. It was going quick for a minute there. I'll take this, look it over, and
Okay.
re-summarize it for you.
Okay, then we can probably release it next week or
Yeah.
something. If we want to do it.
Okay.
You probably, all three of us, want to think of some quote maybe to release press.
For the budget?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I would think, why don't
Yeah.
we do that, and then we can do something next week.
And Mike
Kathleen,
Seaver
you're
did
here
ask
next
me.
week?
I'm leaving Friday and I'll be back on the 1st.
Oh, okay, so you want to put something so we can get
Okay.
something in there?
Should I give it to Deb then?
Sure, give it to Deb. Yeah, we'll work on putting an announcement.
Okay.
And just so, Mike Seaver did ask me for a summary of the budget, which he always
Oh,
asks for.
okay, all
So
right.
he'll be getting that tomorrow, too.
Well, then maybe you're going to want to get something together to the third.
I assume, usually it's the weekend, so.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, then maybe you're going to want to give him something before you leave, and we probably need to have something too.
So I send it to Deb and she'll do a press release
Sure,
for
yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think that would be good.
Okay, thank you.
thank you,
You're welcome,
John.
thank you.
A motion for the journal entries.
Yes, I so moved for the journal entries.
Second, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes, so moved.
I'll second that one.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, well, thank you.
I've
Great
got to sign all
accomplishment.
that stuff.
There's not, there's a lot of these.
Yeah,
But
give me
the
that
rest
folder.